A farmer had 5 sons. They were strong and hard-working, but they always quarreled with one another. Sometimes they even fought. The farmer wanted his sons to stop quarreling and fighting. He wanted them to live in peace. Plain words of advice or scolding did not have much effect on these young people. The farmer always thought what to do to keep his sons united. One day he found an answer to the problem. So he called all his sons together. He showed them a bundle of sticks and said, "I want any of you to break these sticks without separating them from the bundle." Each of the 5 sons tried one by one. They used their full strength and skill, but none of them could break the sticks. Then the old man separated the sticks and gave each of them just a single stick to break. They broke the sticks easily. The farmer said, "A single stick by itself is weak. It is strong as long as it is tied up in a bundle. Likewise, you will be strong if you are united. You will be weak if you are divided." Moral: united we stand, divided we fall.
At school, Sandra asks her classmates, "Is it true that old people smell different?" Her friend Gabby replies, "Well, they all smell rotten." John laughs. "No, only the dead are rotten. Old people are not dead yet. They are still alive." Gabby chuckles. "All right. Then we will call them mature. But as a matter of fact, I don't care how we call old people. I just don't want to be near them." John raises his hand. "Wait a minute. I once saw an experiment on YouTube. It shows that old people don't smell any different. Scientists let 3 groups of people sleep in shirts, old, middle-aged, and young. Each person had to sleep in the same shirt for 5 nights, and the shirts were not washed. Then they asked volunteers to smell the shirts. The volunteers didn't know which shirt came from what group, but all agreed and said that the shirts of the old people smelled the best. "What kind of volunteers were these people who want to smell old people's shirts?" asks Sandra. John: "They were, of course, old retirees."
Piney Taylor was a little boy who enjoyed going to school and doing all sorts of things, except for art and writing. Using brushes and pencils did not come easy to Piney, so his works of art did not end happily, and he would just give up in disgust. But one day Piney found a pencil of such lovely colors that he could not resist, and he tried drawing a circle. As ever, it did not go well, and he was about to throw the pencil away when his drawing began to speak to him. "Psst! You aren't going to leave me like this, are you? Come on, the least you can do is draw me a pair of eyes," said the drawing. Piney was understandably shocked, but he managed to draw 2 little spots inside the circle. "Much better, now I can see myself," said the circle, looking around at itself. "Arg! But what have you done to me?" "I don't draw very well," said Piney, trying to make excuses. "Okay, no problem," the drawing interrupted him. "I'm sure that if you try again you'll do better. Go on, rub me out." So Piney erased the circle and drew another one. Like the first one, it was not very round. "Hey! You forgot the eyes again." "Oh yeah. I think I'm going to have to teach you how to draw until you can do me well," said the circle with its quick, squeaky little voice. To Piney, who remained almost paralyzed with shock, this did not seem like a bad idea, and he immediately found himself drawing and erasing circles. The circle would not stop saying, "Rub this out," but carefully, "It hurts," or "Draw me some hair, quickly, I look like a lollipop," and other funny remarks. After spending nearly the whole afternoon together, Piney could already draw the little figure much better than most of his classmates could have. He was enjoying it so much that he did not want to stop drawing with this crazy new teacher of his. Before going to bed that night, Piney gave his new instructor a hearty thank you for having taught him how to draw so well. "But I didn't do anything silly," answered the little drawing, in its usual quick manner. "Don't you see that you've been practicing a lot, and enjoying it all the while? I bet that's the first time you've done that." Piney stopped to think. The truth was that previously, he He had drawn so badly because he had never practiced more than 10 minutes at a time, and he had always done it angrily and grudgingly. Without doubt, what the little drawing had said was correct. "Okay, you're right, but thank you anyway," said Piney, and before he went to bed, he carefully placed the pencil in his school bag. The next morning Piney jumped out of bed and went running to find his pencil, but it was not there. He searched everywhere, but there was no sign of it. And the sheet of paper on which he had drawn the little figure, although still full of rubbing out marks, was completely blank. Piney began to worry, and he did not know if he had really spent the previous afternoon talking with the little man or whether he had dreamt the whole thing. So, to try to settle the matter, he took a pencil and some paper and tried to draw a little man. It turned out not bad at all, except for a couple of jagged lines. He imagined his bossy little teacher telling him to round out those edges, and that it looked like he was trying to give him spots. Piney gladly rubbed out those bits and redrew them. He realized that the crazy little teacher had been right. It made no difference whether you had the magic pencil or not. To manage to do things, you only needed to keep trying and to enjoy doing so. From that day on, whenever Piney tried to draw or paint or do anything else, he always had fun imagining the result of his work protesting to him and saying, "Come on, my friend, do me a bit better than that. I can't go to the party looking like this."
A mother duck and her little ducklings were on their way to the lake one day. The ducklings were very happy following their mother and quacking along the way. All of a sudden the mother duck saw a fox in the distance. She was frightened and shouted, "Children, hurry to the lake. There's a fox." The ducklings hurried towards the lake. The mother duck wondered what to do. She began to walk back and forth dragging one wing on the ground. When the fox saw her he became happy. He said to himself, "It seems that she's hurt and can't fly. I can easily catch and eat her." Then he ran towards her. The mother duck ran, leading the fox away from the lake. The fox followed. Now he wouldn't be able to harm her ducklings. The mother duck looked towards her ducklings and saw that they had reached the lake. She was relieved, so she stopped and took a deep breath. The fox thought she was tired and he came closer, but the mother duck quickly spread her wings and rose up in the air. She landed in the middle of the lake and her ducklings swam to her. The fox stared in disbelief at the mother duck and her ducklings. He could not reach them because they were in the middle of the lake. Dear children, some birds drag one of their wings on the ground when an enemy is going to attack. In this way they fool their enemies into thinking they are hurt. When the enemy follows them, this gives their children time to escape.
A donkey found a lion's skin and put it on, scaring all the other animals. But when he tried to roar, he brayed instead, giving himself away. The animals quickly realized the truth, and the donkey was humiliated. This fun English story for kids teaches the importance of being true to oneself. Moral: pretending to be something you're not will lead to downfall.
In the south of Spain, there was a small village whose people were very joyful and lucky. The children played under the shade of trees in the gardens of their home. A shepherd boy whose name was Nasir stayed near the village with his father, mother, and grandmother. Early morning each day, he takes his herd of goats up the hills to find a suitable place for them to graze. In the afternoon he would return with them to the village. At night his grandmother would tell him a story. The story of stars. This story really interested Nasir. As usual, on one of these days, as Nasir was watching his herd and playing his flute, he suddenly saw a wonderful light behind the flower bush. When he came towards the branches he saw a transparent and most beautiful crystal ball. The crystal ball was glittering like a colorful rainbow. Nasir carefully took it in his hand and turned it around. With surprise, suddenly he heard a weak voice coming from the crystal ball. It said, "You can make a wish that your heart desires and I will fulfill it." Nasir could not believe that he had actually heard a voice. But he became so engrossed in his thoughts, for he had so many wishes, but he must wish for something which was impossible, like the wish to be able to fly. He said to himself, "If I wait till tomorrow I will remember many things." He put the crystal ball in a bag and gathered the herd, happily returned back to the village. He decided that he would not tell anyone about the crystal ball. On the following day also, Nasir could not decide what to wish for, because he really had everything he needed. The days passed as usual, and Nasir appeared to be very cheerful that the people around him were amazed to see his cheerful disposition. One day a boy followed Nasir and his herd and hid behind a tree. Nasir as usual sat in one corner, took out the crystal ball and for a few moments looked at it. The boy waited for the moment when Nasir would go to sleep. Then he took the crystal ball and ran away. When he arrived in the village, he called all the people and showed them the crystal ball. The citizens of that village took the crystal ball in their hand and turned it around with surprise. Suddenly they heard a voice from inside the crystal ball, which says, "I can fulfill your wish." One person took the ball and screamed, "I want 1 bag full of gold." Another took the ball and said loudly, "I want 2 chests full of jewelry." Some of them wished that they would have their own palace with grand door made from pure gold instead of their old houses. Some also wished for bags full of jewelry, but nobody asked for gardens in their palaces. All their wishes were fulfilled, but still the citizens of the village were not happy. They were jealous because the person that had a palace had no gold and the person that had the gold had no palace. For this reason, the citizens of the village were angry and were not speaking to each other. There was not even one garden which existed in the village where the children could play. The patience of the children was running out and they were uncomfortable. Nasir and his family were happy and pleased. Every morning and afternoon he would play the flute. The children could not wait anymore and decided to return the crystal ball to Nasir. The parents' Sand neighbors went to him. The children said to Nasir, "When we had a small village we all were happy and joyful." The parent also spoke. "In one way or another nobody is happy. The expensive palaces and jewelry only bring us pain." When Nasir saw that the people were really regretful, he said, "I have not wished till now. If you really want everything to return to its own place, then I will wish for it." Everyone happily agreed. Nasir took the crystal ball in his hand, turned around and wished that the village become the same as it was before. Everyone quickly turned towards the village and saw it became the same old village with gardens full of trees and fruits. Once again the people started to live happily and the children played under the shade of trees. From the next day and every day at sunset the sound of Nasir's flute could be heard in the village. This story teaches us that we should be happy with whatever we have and not to be greedy.
Harold Johnson had fallen in love. For a few weeks, he has had a new girlfriend, a woman who he met in the library and who told him she worked in the morning at the farmer's market at the cheese stand. Mr. Johnson had a lot of free time in the afternoons, so he spends most of his leisure time in the library. Mr. Johnson and the woman had a common hobby. They both loved to read classic literature and cookbooks in the library. Once, Mr. Johnson invited the woman to his home for a glass of wine. That's how they became a couple. However, the relationship was not without its problems. Mr. Johnson didn't like the smell of the woman. He told her quite frankly that she smells like cheese. Mr. Johnson believed every time after the woman had visited him, his whole house smelled like cheese. She explained to him that the smell must have come from something else. Eventually, she tells him when they first met she had to tell him that she had some kind of job because she felt embarrassed that in fact, she was unemployed. Mr. Johnson was glad to hear that. So he explained to the woman that, in reality, he was not a pensioner as he had told her before. Mr. Johnson still doesn't understand why she always smells like cheese. "So what's your real job then?" asked Mr. Johnson the woman. "I am unemployed but I do foot massages," she said. "That explains the smell," Mr. Johnson replied. "And what do you do for a living?" asked the woman. "I work on a farm in the pig stall, but fortunately only in the morning."
Once upon a time there was a water bearer in India who had 2 large pots, each hung on each end of a pole which he carried across his neck. One of the pots had a crack in it, and while the other pot was perfect and always delivered a full portion of water at the end of the long walk from the stream to the master's house, the cracked pot arrived only half full. For a full 2 years this went on daily, with the bearer delivering only 1.5 pot full of water in his master's house. Of course, the perfect pot was proud of its accomplishments, perfect to the end for which it was made. But the poor cracked pot was ashamed of its own imperfection, and miserable that it was able to accomplish only half of what it had been made to do. After 2 years of what it perceived to be a bitter failure, it spoke to the water-bearer one day by the stream. "I am ashamed of myself, and I want to apologize to you." "Why?" asked the bearer. "What are you ashamed of?" "I have been able, for these past 2 years, to deliver only half my load because this crack in my side causes water to leak out all the way back to your master's house. Because of my flaws, you have to do all of this work and you don't get full value from your efforts," the pot said. The water-bearer felt sorry for the old cracked pot, and in his compassion he said, "As we return to the master's house, I want you to notice the beautiful flowers along the path." Indeed, as they went up the hill, the old cracked pot took notice of the sun warming the beautiful wild flowers on the side of the path, and this cheered it some. But at the end of the trail, it still felt bad because it had leaked out half its load, and so again it apologized to the bearer for its failure. The bearer said to the pot, "Did you notice that there were flowers only on your side of your path, but not on the other pot's side? That's because I've always known about your flaw, and I took advantage of it. I planted flower seeds on your side of the path, and every day while we walk back from the stream, you've watered them. For 2 years I have been able to pick these beautiful flowers to decorate my master's table. Without you being just the way you are, he would not have this beauty to grace his house. Each of us has our own unique flaw. But it's the cracks and flaws we each have that make our lives together so very interesting and rewarding. You've just got to take each person for what they are and look for the good in them." Some time ago, there lived a king. This king should have been contented with his life, given all the riches and luxuries he had. However, this was not the case. The king always found himself wondering why he just never seemed content with his life. Sure, he had the attention of everyone wherever he went, attended fancy dinners and parties, but somehow, he still felt something was lacking and he couldn't put his finger on it. One day, the king had woken up earlier than usual to stroll around his palace. He entered his huge living room and came to a stop when he heard someone happily singing away. Following this singing, he saw that one of the servants was singing and had a very contented look on his face. This fascinated the king and he summoned this man to his chambers. The man entered the king's chambers as ordered. The king asked why he was so happy. To this the man replied, "Your Majesty, I am nothing but a servant, but I make enough of a living to keep my wife and children happy. We don't need too much, a roof over our heads and warm food to fill our tummy. My wife and children are my inspiration, they are content with whatever little I bring home. I am happy because my family is happy." Hearing this, the king dismissed the servant and summoned his personal assistant to his chambers. The king related his personal anguish about his feelings and then related the story of the servant to his personal assistant, hoping that somehow, he will be able to come up with some reasoning that here was a king who could have anything he wished for at a snap of his fingers and yet was not contented, whereas, his servant, having so little was extremely contented. The personal assistant listened attentively and came to a conclusion. He said, "Your Majesty, I believe that the servant has not been made part of the 99 Club." "The 99 Club? And what exactly is that?" the king inquired. To which the assistant replied, "Your Majesty, to truly know what the 99 Club is, you will have to do the following. Place 99 gold coins in a bag and leave it at this servant's doorstep. You will then understand what the 99 Club is." That very same evening, the king arranged for 99 gold coins to be placed in a bag at the servant's doorstep. Although he was slightly hesitant and he thought he should have put 100 gold coins into the bag, but since his assistant had advised him to put 99, that is what he did. The servant was just stepping out of his house when he saw a bag at his doorstep. Wondering about its contents, he took it into his house and opened the bag. When he opened the bag, he let out a great big shout of joy. Gold coins, so many of them. He could hardly believe it. He called his wife to show her the coins. He then took the bag to a table and emptied it out and began to count the coins. Doing so, he realized that there were 99 coins and he thought it was an odd number, so he counted again, and again, and again, only to come to the same conclusion. 99 gold coins. He began to wonder, what could have happened to that last one coin? For no one would leave 99 coins. He began to search his entire house, looked around his backyard for hours, not wanting to lose out on that one coin. Finally, exhausted, he decided that he was going to have to work harder than ever to make up for that one gold coin to make his entire collection and even 100 gold coins. He got up the next morning, in an extremely horrible mood, shouting at the children and his wife for his delay, not realizing that he had spent most of the night conjuring ways of working hard so that he had enough money to buy himself that gold coin. He went to work as usual, but not in his usual best mood, singing happily, as he grumpily did his daily errands. Seeing the man's attitude change so drastically, the king was puzzled. He promptly summoned his assistant to his chambers. The king related his thoughts about the servant and once again, his assistant listened. The king could not believe that the servant who until yesterday had been singing away and was happy and content with his life had taken a sudden change of attitude, even though he should have been happier after receiving the gold coins. To this the assistant replied, "Ah. But your majesty, the servant has now officially joined the 99 Club." He explained, the 99 Club is just a name given to those people who have everything but yet are never contented, therefore they are always working hard and striving for that extra one to round it out to 100. We have so much to be thankful for and we can live with very little in our lives, but the minute we're given something bigger and better, we want even more. We are not the same happy contented person we used to be, we want more and by wanting more and more we don't realize the price we pay for it. We lose our sleep, our happiness, we hurt the people around us just as a price to pay for our growing needs and desires. That is what joining the 99 Club is all about. Hearing this, king decided that from that day onwards, he was going to start appreciating all the little things in life. Striving for more is always good, but let's not strive so hard and for so much that we loses all those near and dear to our hearts. We shouldn't compromise our happiness for moments of luxuries. There was a country long time ago where the people would change a king every year. The person who would become the king had to agree to a contract that he would be sent to an island after his 1 year of being a king. One king finished his term and it was time for him to go to the island and live there. The people dressed him up in expensive clothes and put him on an elephant and took him around the cities to say goodbye to all the people. This was the moment of sadness for all the kings who ruled for 1 year. After saying farewell, the people took the king with a boat to a remote island and left him there. On their way back, they discovered a ship that had sunk just recently. They saw a young man who survived by holding on to a floating piece of wood. As they needed a new king, they picked up the young man and took him to their country. They requested him to be a king for a year. First he refused, but later he agreed to be a king. People told him about all the rules and regulations and that how he will be sent to an island after 1 year. After 3 days of being a king, he asked the ministers if they could show him the island where all the other kings were sent. They agreed and took him to the island. The island was covered with thick jungles and sounds of vicious animals were heard coming out of them. The king went little bit inside to check. Soon he discovered the dead bodies of all the past kings. He understood that as soon as they were left in the island, the animals came and killed them. The king went back to the country and collected 100 strong workers. He took them to the island and instructed them to clean the jungle, remove all the deadly animals and cut down all excess trees. He would visit the island every month to see how the work was progressing. In the first month, all the animals were removed and many trees were cut down. In the second month, the whole island was cleaned out. The king then told the workers to plant gardens in various parts of the island. He also took with himself useful animals like chickens, ducks, birds, goats, cows, etc. In the third month, he ordered the workers to build big houses and docking stations for ships. Over the months, the island turned into a beautiful place. The young king would wear simple clothes and spend very little from his earnings as a king. He sent all the earnings to the island for storage. When 9 months passed like this, the king called the ministers and told them, "I know that I have to go the island after 1 year, but I would like to go there right now." But the ministers didn't agree to this and said that he has to wait for another 3 months to complete the year. 3 months passed and now it was a full year. The people dressed up the young king and put him on an elephant to take him around the country to say goodbye to others. However, this king is unusually happy to leave the kingdom. People asked him, "All the other kings would cry at this moment, and why are you laughing?" He replied, "Don't you know what the wise people say? They say that when you came to this world as a baby, you were crying and everyone was smiling. Live such a life that when you are die, you will be smiling and everyone around you will be crying. I have lived that life. While all the other kings were lost into the luxuries of the kingdom, I always thought about the future and planned for it. I turned the deadly island into a beautiful abode for me where I can stay peacefully." The moral lesson from this story is about how we should live our life. The life of this world is to prepare for the life hereafter. In this life, we shouldn't get lost into the deceiving and attractive things of this world and forget about what is to come in the afterlife. Rather, even if we are kings, we should live a simple life like our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and save all our enjoyments for the hereafter. May Allah make it easy for us all. Ameen. Holy Quran 31:34 says, "Verily the knowledge of the hour is with Allah alone. It is He who sends down rain, and He who knows what is in the wombs. Nor does anyone know what it is that he will earn on the morrow, nor does anyone know in what land he is to die. Verily with Allah is full knowledge and He is acquainted with all things." Holy Quran 59:18 urges us to prepare for tomorrow, O ye who believe. Fear Allah, and let every soul look to what provision He has sent forth for the morrow. Yeah, fear Allah, for Allah is well acquainted with all that He do. Somebody asked Imam Hassan a.s., "Why are we reluctant to die? Why don't we like death?" "Because," replied the Imam Hassan a.s., "you ruined your next world and developed this one. Naturally, you do not like to be transferred from flourishing to decline." A man with his donkey carrying 2 sacks of wheat was on his way to the market. After a little while he was tired and they rested under a tree. When he woke up from his nap he could not see the donkey and started searching for the donkey everywhere. On the way he met a boy. He asked the boy, "Have you seen my donkey?" The boy asked, "Is the donkey's left eye blind, his right foot lame, and is he carrying a load of wheat?" The man was happy and said, "Yes, exactly." "Where have you seen it?" The boy answered, "I haven't seen it." This made the man very angry and he took the boy to the village chief for punishment. The judge asked, "Dear boy, if you had not seen it the donkey, how you could describe it?" The boy answered, "I saw the tracks of a donkey and the right and left tracks were different. From this I understood that the donkey that passed there was limping. And the grass on the right side of the road was eaten but the grass on the left was not. From that I understood that his left eye was blind. There were wheat seeds scattered on the ground and I understood that he must have been carrying a load of wheat." The judge understood the boy's cleverness and told the man to forgive the boy. This story teaches us that we should not be quick to judge the people.
A cunning cat tried to trick a mouse by pretending to be friendly, offering food and safety. But the mouse, wary of the cat's intentions, stayed away. This short moral story for kids reminds us that not everyone who speaks kindly has good intentions. Moral: beware of sweet talkers.
Today I went with my mother to the circus. The show started at 6, but we arrived early because we knew there would be a long line at the ticket box. My mother asked why the tickets are so expensive. The salesperson explained that they have big animals such as tigers, etc., and they need to eat enormous amounts of meat every day. Finally, the show starts. First, we see a clown who makes jokes by gesturing with his hands. Then a huge cage is set up and the animals arrive. We see an elephant that raises a leg, a monkey that is dressed in a girly school costume, and then we see the big cats led into the cage. A tiger has to jump through a burning ring, and a lion has to jump from stool to stool. I ask my mother if the animals are also doing such things in nature. My mother responds that she doesn't know. Last month I drove home from work just as I do every day. I was driving slowly and stopped at a traffic light. Suddenly, I heard a loud bang. The car behind me had hit my bumper. I immediately got out of the car and saw that the tail light was broken. The driver admitted his guilt immediately and offered me money for the damage. He wanted to give me $500 cash. I rejected his offer and told him I was going to call the police. Suddenly, all around me went black. I have no memory of what happened at that moment. I awoke in a hospital. The doctor told me somebody had shot me from behind.
Once upon a time, there was a bird in a cage who sang for her merchant owner. He took delight in her song day and night, and was so fond of her that he served her water in a golden dish. Before he left for a business trip, he asked the bird if she had a wish. "I will go through the forest where you were born, past the birds of your old neighborhood. What message should I take for them?" The bird said, "Tell them I sit full of sorrow in a cage singing my captive song. Day and night, my heart is full of grief. I hope it will not be long before I see my friends again and fly freely through the trees. Bring me a message from the lovely forest, which will set my heart at ease. Oh, I yearn for my beloved, to fly with him, and spread my wings. Until then there is no joy for me, and I am cut off from all of life's sweet things." The merchant traveled on his donkey through the dense forest. He listened to the melodies of many birds. When the merchant reached the forest where his bird came from, he stopped, pushed his hood back, and said, "Oh, you birds! Greetings to you all from my pretty bird locked in her cage. She sends tidings of her love to you and wants to tell of her plight. She asks for a reply that will ease her heart. My love for her keeps her captive with bars all around her. She wants to join her beloved and sing her songs through the air with a free heart, but I would miss her beautiful song. Sand cannot let her go." All the birds listened to the merchant's words. Suddenly one bird shrieked and fell from a tree branch to the ground. The merchant froze to the spot where he stood. Nothing could astound him more than this did. One bird had fallen down dead. The merchant continued on to the city and traded his goods. At last he returned to his home. He did not know what to tell his bird when she asked what message he had brought. He stood before her cage and said, "Oh, nothing to speak of, no, no." The bird cried, "I must know at once." "I do not know what happened," said the merchant. "I told them your message." Then, one of them fell down dead. Suddenly the merchant's bird let out a terrible shriek and fell on her head to the bottom of the cage. The merchant was horrified. He wept in despair. "Oh, what have I done?" He cried, "What have I done? Now my life means nothing. My moon has gone and so has my sun. Now my own bird is dead." He opened the cage door, reached in, and took her into his hands gently and carefully. "I will have to bury her now," he said, "poor thing is dead." Suddenly, the moment he had lifted the bird out of the cage, she swooped up, flew out of the window and landed on the nearest roof slope. She turned to him and said, gratefully, "Thank you, merchant master, for delivering my message. That bird's reply instructed me how to win my freedom. All I had to do was to be dead. I gained my freedom when I chose to die. So now I fly to my beloved who waits for me. Goodbye, goodbye, my master no longer." My bird was wise, she taught me secret, the merchant reflected. If you want to be with the ones you love, you must be ready to give up everything, even life itself. And then, by Allah, you will win your heart's desire. A long time ago, there was a huge apple tree. A little boy loved to come and play around it every day. He climbed to the treetop, ate the apples, and took a nap under the shadow. He loved the tree and the tree loved to play with him. Time went by, the little boy had grown up and he no longer played around the tree every day. One day, the boy came back to the tree and he looked sad. "Come and play with me," the tree asked the boy. "I am no longer a kid, I do not play around trees anymore," the boy replied. "I want toys. I need money to buy them." "Sorry, but I do not have money, but you can pick all my apples and sell them. So, you will have money." The boy was so excited. He grabbed all the apples on the tree and left happily. The boy never came back after he picked the apples. The tree was sad. One day, the boy who now turned into a man returned and the tree was excited. "Come and play with me," the tree said. "I do not have time to play. I have to work for my family. We need a house for shelter. Can you help me?" "Sorry, but I do not have any house. But you can chop off my branches to build your house." So the man cut all the branches of the tree and left happily. The tree was glad to see him happy, but the man never came back since then. The tree was again lonely and sad. One hot summer day, the man returned and the tree was delighted. "Come and play with me," the tree said. "I am getting old. I want to go sailing to relax myself." "Can you give me a boat?" said the man. "Use my trunk to build your boat. You can sail far away and be happy." So the man cut the tree trunk to make a boat. He went sailing and never showed up for a long time. Finally, the man returned after many years. "Sorry, my boy. But I do not have anything for you anymore." "No more apples for you," the tree said. "No problem, I do not have any teeth to bite," the man replied. "No more trunk for you to climb on." "I am too old for that now," the man said. "I really cannot give you anything, the only thing left is my dying roots," the tree said with tears. "I do not need much now, just a place to rest." "I am tired after all these years," the man replied. "Good. Old tree roots are the best place to lean on and rest. Come sit down with me and rest." The man sat down and the tree was glad and smiled with tears. This is a story of everyone. The tree is like our parents. When we were young, we loved to play without mom and dad. When we grow up, we leave them, only come to them when we need something or when we are in trouble. No matter what, parents will always be there and give everything they could just to make you happy. You may think the boy is cruel to the tree, but that is how all of us treat our parents. We take them for granted, we don't appreciate all they do for us, until it's too late. Wallahi, may Allah forgives us of our shortcomings and may He guide us.
I have slept restlessly all night. I sleep alone and suddenly there's a bang. I jump out of bed. I put on a pair of pants and examine the house. I hear footsteps. They're coming out of the living room. When I enter the living room, it's empty. There's no one there. Now I notice that the balcony is open. I turn on the lights and look around. The cupboards are open, and on the floor are all my things. There were burglars here. I feel bad, but quickly notice that there is nothing missing. Everything is messy, but the burglars didn't take anything. They were looking for cash and jewelry. I believe they were drug addicts because they only stole cash. I don't want to call the police. The next day, I'll get a gun.
Once there was a shepherd boy who had to look after a flock of sheep. One day, he felt bored and decided to play a trick on the villagers. He shouted, "Help! Wolf! Wolf!" The villagers heard his cries and rushed out of the village to help the shepherd boy. When they reached him, they asked, "Where is the wolf?" The shepherd boy laughed loudly, "Ha, ha, ha. I fooled all of you. I was only playing a trick on you." A few days later, the shepherd boy played this trick again. Again he cried, "Help! Help! Wolf! Wolf!" Again, the villagers rushed up the hill to help him and again they found that boy had tricked them. They were very angry with him for being so naughty. Then, sometime later, a wolf went into the field. The wolf attacked one sheep, and then another and another. The shepherd boy ran towards the village shouting, "Help! Help! Wolf! Help! Somebody!" The villagers heard his cries but they laughed because they thought it was another trick. The boy ran to the nearest villager and said, "A wolf is attacking the sheep. I lied before, but this time it is true." Finally, the villagers went to look. It was true. They could see the wolf running away and many dead sheep lying on the grass. We may not believe someone who often tells lies, even when he tells the truth.
It was Susan's birthday party. She was 7 years old. She was born July 18th. She was in 2nd grade. She had many friends. She had friends in school. She had friends at church. She had friends in swim class. She had friends in dance class. Nancy was her best friend. Nancy and Susan did everything together. Susan invited all her friends to her party. All her friends came to the party. It was a pool party. The pool party was in her backyard. About 30 kids came to her pool party. There was a lot to eat. They had hamburgers and hot dogs. They had oranges, apples, and bananas. They had cake, candy, and marshmallows. They had soda and juice. There was a lot to do. They swam in the pool. They dove off the diving board. They floated on the floats. They played many different games. Everyone had fun. Everyone had a good time. No one wanted to go home. No one could wait until Susan turned 8.
We have planned to move to another city. Everything has been planned for weeks, but this Friday we'll finally make the move. All our household items have been packed in boxes. Most of the furniture has been carefully wrapped in blankets and foil. Additionally, we have made a list of which items are in which boxes. This will help us to save time when we unpack our stuff. It is difficult to make a move like this alone, which is why we have asked friends to help us. We also leased a truck for that day. Since we are doing everything ourselves, with a little help from friends and neighbors, we are saving a lot of money. Professional moving companies are expensive and we would rather save our money to buy additional furniture since the new house is larger than the old one. Marco and Paula have children who still live in their house, but the couple has been separated for a short time. Fortunately, Marco still has a little flat in the city and has left the house to Paula and the children. Paula's parents are already 80 years old and have a silver wedding anniversary at the weekend. It's a beautiful, warm summer afternoon and Paula's father Alberto has an idea. Why shouldn't they arrange a barbecue evening in the garden? Marco, friends, the kids, and relatives, all of them would come besides. Alberto has always liked Marco. After all, they are both hunters in a hunting club. Break up or not, it would be a great barbecue evening. Alberto calls his daughter and expects a promise for the weekend. It costs Paula a lot of conviction that Marco should be the grill master in his own garden. Marco agrees. Saturday in the afternoon, the moment has arrived. The grill is turned on while the children are playing and the adults are drinking beer. Music is blasting out of an old stereo. Alberto helps Marco at the grill, although it is difficult for him and he had forgotten his glasses. Suddenly it comes into Marcos' mind that he has a present for Alberto. It's a big hunting knife with a horn handle. Marco explains that this is a very special knife from the traditional Spanish brand mule. A knife for collectors. The beautiful evening has come to an end. As Marco is about to leave, Paula gives him a kiss and says that she wants to talk to him the next day. On Sunday, Marco and Paula meet again. She feels very grateful for the splendid barbecue evening. They have a conversation and Marco tells her that during their relationship not everything has been bad. Paula proposes to Marco, for the children, they could live together again. Indeed, after 1 week the family moves together again. Marco is very happy, especially because the cheap knife which he bought on his single vacation in Thailand didn't fail to make an impression.
A tale is told about a small town that had historically been dry, no alcohol sold, but then a local businessman decided to build a tavern. A group of Christians from a local church were concerned and planned an all-night prayer meeting to ask God to intervene. It just so happened that shortly thereafter lightning struck the bar and it burned to the ground. The owner of the bar sued the church, claiming that the prayers of the congregation were responsible, but the church hired a lawyer to argue in court that they were not responsible. The presiding judge, after his initial review of the case, stated that, no matter how this case comes out, one thing is clear. The tavern owner believes in prayer and the Christians do not. The baby bear followed his mama. Mama bear walked through the woods. She was looking for berries to eat. She found some black berries. She started eating them. The baby started eating them, too. They ate all the berries. Baby bear was full. Mama bear was still hungry. She started walking again. She wanted to find more berries to eat. Baby bear lay down. He was full. He wanted to take a nap. But Mama bear came back. She growled at baby bear. He understood Mama's growl. When Mama growled, he obeyed. He got up and followed his mama. Someday he would take a nap after a meal. A squirrel ran up a tree with a nut. It dropped the nut and ran back down to the ground. It picked up the nut and looked at Baby Bear. Then it ran back up the tree. Baby Bear did not like nuts. They were too hard to open.
Tomorrow is the weekend. I want to pay cash in the supermarket and go to the movies later. Before that, I have to go to the ATM to withdraw money. First, I put my card in the ATM. A prompt will appear on the screen to enter my secret number. The secret number, also known as the PIN, is made up of 4 numbers. After that, I gain access to my account. I can also see on the screen how high my account balance is. I decide to withdraw 50 euros. After I withdraw the money, I have to take my card out. Finally, I get a receipt.
Once upon a time there was a child ready to be born. One day the child asked God, "They tell me you are going to send me to earth tomorrow, but how am I going to live there being so small and helpless?" God replied, "Among the many angels I have chosen one for you. She will be waiting for you and will take care of you." Said child, "But tell me, here in heaven I don't do anything else but sing and smile. That's what I need to be happy." God replied, "Your angel will sing for you every day. And you will feel your angel's love and be happy." "And," said the child, "how am I going to be able to understand when people talk to me, if I don't know the language that men talk?" "That's easy," God said. "Your angel will tell you the most beautiful and sweet words you will ever hear, and with much patience and care, your angel will teach you how to speak." The child looked up at God saying, "And what am I going to do when I want to talk to you?" God smiled at the child saying, "Your angel will teach you how to pray." The child said, "I've heard on earth there are bad men. Who will protect me?" God replied, "Your angel will defend you, even if it means risking life." The child looked sad, saying, "But I will always be sad because I will not see you anymore." God replied, "Your angel will always talk to you about me and will teach you the way to come back to me, even though I will always be next to you." At that moment there was much peace in heaven, but voices from earth could already be heard. The child, in a hurry, asked softly, "Oh God, if I am about to leave now, please tell me my angel's name." God replied, "Your angel's name is of no importance. You will simply call her mother."
Last month I lost my job because I had an argument with my boss. I just left the office and went home. In my desperation to find a new job, I went to an employment agency. They said I am qualified for many different positions. I agree with that statement because I think of myself as an honest, dedicated, and diligent worker. Every day I send out new applications, and many of them I send via traditional mail to catch the attention of potential employers. However, most companies are not even answering. Yesterday I received a letter. The letterhead looked quite familiar. Then I looked at the sender. I couldn't believe it. Apparently, my former company had fired my old boss, and now they are offering me the same position I had before.
One cold, frosty day in the middle of winter, a colony of ants was busy drying out some grains of corn, which had grown damp during the wet autumn weather. A grasshopper, half dead with cold and hunger, came up to one of the ants. "Please give me a grail or two from your store of corn to save my life," he said faintly. "We work day and night to get this corn in." "Why should I give it to you?" asked the ant crossly. "Whatever were you doing all last summer when you should have been gathering your food?" "Oh, I didn't have time for things like that," said the grasshopper. "I was far too busy singing to carry corn about." The ant laughed unkindly. "In that case you can sing all winter as far as I am concerned," he said. And without another word he turned back to his work. Islam teaches us that we should help the less fortunate. But it also teaches us that we must work hard and not rely on the kindness of others for our daily needs. One hot day, an ant was searching for some water. After walking around for some time, she came to a spring. To reach the spring, she had to climb up a blade of grass. While making her way up, she slipped and fell into the water. She could have drowned if a dove up a nearby tree had not seen her. Seeing that the ant was in trouble, the dove quickly plucked off a leaf and dropped it into the water near the struggling ant. The ant moved towards the leaf and climbed up there. Soon it carried her safely to dry ground. Just at that time, a hunter nearby was throwing out his net towards the dove, hoping to trap it. Guessing what he was about to do, the ant quickly bit him on the heel. Feeling the pain, the hunter dropped his net. The dove was quick to fly away to safety. One good turn deserves another.
Wife was angry. She was angry at her husband. He lied to her. He lied many times. She was tired of his lies. She said enough was enough. She took off her ring. She dropped it into the toilet. She flushed the toilet. She got into her car. She got on the freeway. She drove the car fast. She was crying. She was very sad. She drove the car faster. She passed many cars. The speed limit was 60 miles per hour. She was going 80 miles per hour. A cop saw her. The cop chased her. The cop turned on his red light. He turned on his siren. She heard the cop car. She saw the flashing light. She drove faster. Now she was going 90 miles per hour. The cop drove faster. It started to rain. She didn't slow down. She lost control. The car rolled over. It rolled over and over. She died before it came to a stop.
Steve Jones is a taxi driver. He is a very hard-working man. He drives his taxi for at least 12 hours a day. Sunday is the only day when he doesn't work. Although his job is very demanding, he meets a lot of different people. Many customers like to chat with Steve. Besides, he is driving a large limousine, and that makes the job more bearable. Many of the customers leave him a large tip. He cannot complain about the money. However, in the future, he would like to do something else. Steve has been thinking a lot about what he should do in the future. The other day he felt inspired. Now, he has a pretty good idea of what he is going to do after he quits this job. He has gotten the inspiration after he watched the movie Taxi Driver, starring actor Robert De Niro.
A milkmaid was on her way to the market to sell some milk from her cow. As she carried the large jug of milk on top of her head, she began to dream of all the things she could do after selling the milk. With that money, I'll buy 100 chicks to rear in my backyard. When they are fully grown, I can sell them at a good price at the market. As she walked on, she continued dreaming, then I'll buy 2 young goats and rear them on the grass close by. When they are fully grown, I can sell them at an even better price. Still dreaming, she said to herself, soon, I'll be able to buy another cow, and I will have more milk to sell. Then I shall have even more money. With these happy thoughts, she began to skip and jump. Suddenly she tripped and fell. The jug broke and all the milk spilt onto the ground. No more dreaming now, she sat down and cried. Do not count your chickens before they are hatched.
In former times Werner Schultz was an actor in a theater. In Berlin he was well known, and also had managed to get an important role for a television series in which he acted as a credible criminal. Mr. Schultz apparently was never poor and had always been interested in art and antiques. Now he was over 50 years old and received fewer offers from movies and theaters. But Mr. Schultz had also become quite famous as an art painter. It can be said that Mr. Schultz was a real artist and also a connoisseur of art, because he had wide knowledge, especially of antique paintings. He was well acquainted with the Impressionists of the 19th century. After many years as an artist, actor, and painting expert, Mr. Schultz was a welcomed customer in many shops and galleries. Mr. Schultz bought many valuable oil paintings and antiques in antique shops and art galleries. But his reputation for being a good supplier was even greater. The quality of his paintings and the merchandise he offered to sell were outstanding. One day newspapers reported that the famous art dealer and actor Werner Schultz had died. No one knew that he had died since Mr. Schultz had no relatives, therefore journalists were looking for friends and relatives. Recently, journalists found out what they were looking for. Mr. Schultz was a distant relative of Hermann Göring.
That year, in the local school, there was a new math teacher, as well as some new pupils. One of the new kids was the stupidest child anyone had ever seen. It made no difference how quickly or how slowly they tried explaining numbers to him. He would always end up saying something enormously dumb. Like 2 plus 2 was 5, 7 times 3 was 27, or a triangle had 30 corners. Before this boy arrived, Math's lessons had been the most boring of all. Now they were great fun. Encouraged by the new teacher, the children would listen to the pieces of nonsense spouted by the new kid, and they would have to correct his mistakes. They all wanted to be the first to find his mistakes, and then think up the most original ways to explain them. To do this they used all kinds of stuff: sweets, playing cards, oranges, paper planes. It didn't seem like any of this bothered the new kid. However, little Louis was sure that it was bound to make him feel sad inside. So one day, he decided to follow the new kid home after school. Louis was sure he would see him crying. On leaving school, the new kid walked a few minutes to a local park, and there he waited for a while, until someone came along to meet him. It was the new teacher. The teacher gave the new kid a hug, and off they went, hand in hand. Following from a distance, Louis could hear they were talking about math. And that stupid new kid knew everything about it, much more than anyone in the class.
When things in your life seem almost too much to handle, when 24 hours in a day are not enough, remember the mayonnaise jar and the coffee. A professor stood before his philosophy class and had some items in front of him. When the class began, wordlessly, he picked up a very large and empty mayonnaise jar and proceeded to fill it with golf balls. He then asked the students if the jar was full. They agreed that it was. So the professor then picked up a box of pebbles and poured them into the jar. He shook the jar lightly. The pebbles rolled into the open areas between the golf balls. He then asked the students again if the jar was full. They agreed it was. The professor next picked up a box of sand and poured it into the jar. Of course, the sand filled up everything else. He asked once more if the jar was full. The students responded unanimous, yes. The professor then produced 2 cups of coffee from under the table and poured the entire contents into the jar, effectively filling the empty space between the sand. The students laughed. Now, said the professor, as the laughter subsided, I want you to recognize that this jar represents your life. The golf balls are the important things: your God, family, your children, your health, your friends, and your favorite passions, things that if everything else was lost and only they remained, your life would still be full. The pebbles are the other things that matter, like your job, your house, and your car. The sand is everything else, the small stuff. If you put the sand into the jar first, he continued, there is no room for the pebbles or the golf balls. The same goes for life. If you spend all your time and energy on the small stuff, you will never have room for the things that are important. Pay attention to the things that are critical to your happiness. Play with your children. Take care of the golf balls first, the things that really matter. Set your priorities. The rest is just sand. One of the students raised her hand and inquired what the coffee represented. The professor smiled. I'm glad you asked. It just goes to show you that no matter how full your life may seem, there's always room for a couple of cups of coffee with the friends.
A man and his son were once going with their donkey to market. As they were walking along by its side, a countryman passed them and said, "You fools, what is a donkey for but to ride upon?" So the man put the boy on the donkey, and they went on their way. But soon they passed a group of men, one of whom said, "See that lazy youngster? He lets his father walk while he rides." So the man ordered his boy to get off, and got on himself. But they hadn't gone far when they passed 2 women, one of whom said to the other, "Shame on that lazy lout to let his poor little son trudge along." Well, the man didn't know what to do, but at last he took his boy up before him on the donkey. By this time they had come to the town, and the passers-by began to jeer and point at them. The man stopped and asked what they were scoffing at. The men said, "Aren't you ashamed of yourself for overloading that poor donkey of yours and your hulking son?" The man and boy got off and tried to think what to do. They thought and they thought, till at last they cut down a pole, tied the donkey's feet to it, and raised the pole and the donkey to their shoulders. They went along amid the laughter of all who met them till they came to Market Bridge, when the donkey, getting one of his feet loose, kicked out and caused the boy to drop his end of the pole. In the struggle the donkey fell over the bridge, and his 4 feet being tied together, he was drowned. "That will teach you," said an old man who had followed them. "Please all, and you will please none."
The little red hen asked for help planting wheat, but no one wanted to help. When it was time to harvest and make bread, they all wanted to eat, but the hen kept the bread for herself, teaching a lesson about fairness and hard work. Moral: hard work brings rewards.
Maria comes from Poland and works twice a week as a maid in a big house. The house belongs to Ms. Sanchez, who is living alone. Once in a while, her son comes for a visit. Her son is unemployed and receives some money from his mother. The son lives at a friend's place. He often comes in the morning hours to his mother's house and is watching TV. If the weather is fine, he sits on the terrace and drinks beer. Maria has to carry the empty beer bottles into the basement. In the basement are huge numbers of cases with full beer bottles stored. Ms. Sanchez works very hard. She works in a factory and comes home very late. But she often calls her son and also sometimes Maria. One day the son asks Maria for a favor. He says, "I'll be on a trip to another country for a few weeks. But don't tell it my mother. Make it appear as everything is normal." "No problem," says Maria. The next few days everything seems to be normal. Ms. Sanchez calls Maria and asks if her son still was at home and if all is okay. "Yes, Ms. Sanchez, everything is all right." Maria is sitting on the terrace and drinking beer. She'll carry the empty bottles in the basement.
Once upon a time, there was a little boy who became very ill. He had to spend all day in bed, unable to move. Because other children weren't allowed to come near him, he suffered greatly and spent his days feeling sad and blue. There wasn't much he could do except look out of the window. Time passed, and his feeling of despair just grew. Until one day he saw a strange shape in the window. It was a penguin eating a sausage sandwich. The penguin squeezed in through the open window, said, "Good afternoon," to the boy, turned around, and left again. Of course, the boy was very surprised. He was still trying to work out what had happened, when outside his window he saw a monkey in a nappy, busy blowing up a balloon. At first the boy asked himself what that could possibly be, but after a while, as more and more crazy-looking characters appeared out the window, he burst out laughing and found it hard to stop. Anyone wanting to stop laughing would never be helped by seeing a pig playing a tambourine, an elephant jumping on a trampoline, or a dog wearing a pair of glasses and talking about nothing except politics. The little boy didn't tell anyone about this because who would have believed him? Even so, those strange characters ended up putting joy back in his heart and in his body. Before long, his health had improved so much that he was able to go back to school again. There he got to talk to his friends and tell them all the strange things he had seen. While he was talking to his best friend, he saw something sticking out of his friend's school bag. The boy asked his friend what it was, and he was so insistent that finally his friend had to show him what was in the bag. There, inside, were all the fancy dress suits and disguises that his best friend had been using to try to cheer the little boy up. And from that day on, the little boy always did his best to make sure that no one felt sad and alone.
A lion shared a kill with his animal friends, but when they came for their share, he claimed it all, leaving them with nothing. Soon, no one wanted to hunt with him anymore. This story teaches that selfishness can leave you isolated and without friends. Moral: selfishness leads to isolation. A lion fell in love with a woodcutter's daughter. The woodcutter, frightened, asked the lion to remove his claws and teeth for safety. The lion did so, but then the woodcutter chased him away. The lion learned that love should never blind us to reality. Moral: love can make us blind to danger.
I'm late today and I have to leave for work very quickly. I am jumping into my car. As I turn onto the freeway, I'm suddenly not sure if I took my door key with me. I'm touching my bag. My God! I forgot my key, I say aloud. I make a U-turn and drive back as fast as I can. I park my car right in front of my door, although it's not normally where one is allowed to park or to stop a car. I live on the 3rd floor and still run up the stairs hoping to get away with it. I'm looking for the key in my apartment, but I can't find it right away. After a few minutes, I come to the realization I had left the key in my jacket. I'm running downstairs back to the car. I'm looking around. Where's my car? In the distance I see a tow truck pulling my car off.
Gus Grumplings was never happy with anything. He had lots of friends and parents who loved him dearly, but all Gus could think about was what he didn't have, or things he did have which he was unhappy with. If someone gave him a car, it would be too big or too slow. If he went to the zoo, he'd come back disappointed because they hadn't let him feed the lions. If he played football with his friends, he would complain, saying there were too many of them for just one ball. What caught Gus unawares was Chuckles the prankster cloud. One day, Chuckles was drifting past, and heard all of Gus's complaining. Chuckles wafted over to see. When the cloud was right above Gus, he started dropping heavy black rain on him. That was Chuckles' favorite trick to play on grumpy little kids. Gus wasn't at all impressed by this new development. It just made him complain even more. He was even angrier after he realized that the cloud was following him. Well, this carried on for almost a week. Gus couldn't get away from the cloud, and he got more and more infuriated. Gus had a little friend, a happy and generous girl called Gladys. Gladys was the only one who had been willing to hang around with Gus during all those black, rainy days. All the other children had run off to avoid getting soaked and ending up completely black. One day, when Gus was at the end of his tether, she said to him, "Cheer up! What you should realize is that you're the only one of us who has his very own cloud, and even better, its rain is black. We could play some fun games with a cloud like this, don't you reckon?" As Gladys was his only company these days, and he didn't want her to leave as the others had, Gus reluctantly agreed. Gladys took him to the swimming pool and left him there until all the pool water was black. Then she went and got other kids. They came and played in the pool. The water being black meant they could play hide and seek. Grudgingly, Gus had to admit it had been a lot of fun, but what was even more fun was playing with the cat. Gus would find cats and run alongside them. When the cats felt themselves getting wet, they would jump about in the craziest way and run off at top speed, with funny looks on their faces. Before long, all the children in town had gathered around Gus, thinking up new games they could play using the cloud. For the first time ever, Gus started to see the positive side of things, even things which, at first, had seemed so bad. Chuckles, the prankster cloud, thought that he could now leave. His work had been done. But before leaving, he gave Gus 2 days of multicolored rain, with which the children invented the most fun games ever. When Chuckles finally left, Gus didn't complain. Now he knew to focus on the good in life, and the good thing about Chuckles' departure was that no longer was Gus soaking wet all day. Now he could go and do dry things, and that's exactly what he did.
Once there was a king who had presented his daughter, the princess, with a beautiful diamond necklace. The necklace was stolen and his people in the kingdom searched everywhere but could not find it. Some said a bird might have stolen it. The king then asked them all to search for it and put a reward for $50,000 for anyone who found it. One day a clerk was walking home along a river next to an industrial area. This river was completely polluted, filthy and smelly. As he was walking, the clerk saw a shimmering in the river, and when he looked, he saw the diamond necklace. He decided to try and catch it so that he could get the $50,000 reward. He put his hand in the filthy, dirty river and grabbed at the necklace, but somehow missed it and didn't catch it. He took his hand out and looked again, and the necklace was still there. He tried again. This time he walked in the river and dirted his pants in the filthy river and put his whole arm in to catch the necklace. But strangely, he still missed the necklace. He came out and started walking away, feeling depressed. Then again he saw the necklace, right there. This time he was determined to get it, no matter what. He decided to plunge into the river, although it was a disgusting thing to do as the river was polluted, and his whole body would become filthy. He plunged in, and searched everywhere for the necklace, and yet he failed. This time he was really bewildered and came out feeling very depressed that he could not get the necklace that would get him $50,000. Just then a saint who was walking by, saw him, and asked him what was the matter. The clerk didn't want to share the secret with the saint, thinking the saint might take the necklace for himself, so he refused to tell the saint anything. But the saint could see this man was troubled and being compassionate, again asked the clerk to tell him the problem and promised that he would not tell anyone about it. The clerk mustered some courage and decided to put some faith in the saint. He told the saint about the necklace and how he tried to catch it, but kept failing. The saint then told him that perhaps he should try looking upward, toward the branches of the tree, instead of in the filthy river. The clerk looked up and true enough, the necklace was dangling on the branch of a tree. He had been trying to capture a mere reflection of the real necklace all this time. Material happiness is just like the filthy, polluted river, because it is a mere reflection of the true happiness in the spiritual world. We can never achieve the happiness we are looking for no matter how hard we endeavor in material life. Instead we should look upwards, toward God, who is the source of real happiness, and stop chasing after the reflection of this happiness in the material world. This spiritual happiness is the only thing that can satisfy us completely. Happy is the man who always kept the afterlife in his view, who remembers the day of reckoning through his deeds, who led a contented life and who was happy with the lot that Allah had destined for him. Imam Ali, A.S.
A poor woodcutter dropped his axe into a river. When he prayed for help, a river spirit appeared with a golden axe and asked if it was his. The woodcutter, though tempted, said no. The spirit then brought out a silver axe, but again, the woodcutter refused. Finally, the spirit returned his old iron axe. Impressed by his honesty, the spirit rewarded him with the gold and silver axes too. Moral: honesty is the best policy.
Some people say Michael Gomez is a hermit, but that's only partly true. The truth is, he is living isolated in Andalusia near the city of Granada. A hermit is often poor in material things, and this also applies to Michael. He has no electricity. But he can get some for cooking as he has a stove, and in front of his house, he has connected a generator. There is enough water. In the back area of his dwelling, water virtually flows off the roof and down the wall until it disappears in the floor. Otherwise he is well equipped. He has a big bee and a homemade camping toilet. Once a week he drives with his bicycle to Granada, where he goes shopping in the supermarket. Michael has a dream. He wants a modern toilet and, even more important, a real, closed panorama window. The problem is, his dwelling has several smaller entrances and at the front a huge, over 5 meters wide entrance. The entrance is opened most of the time because no door fits, and plastic foil doesn't help if it's cold and raining outside. But the view out of this enormous entrance is fantastic. Michael lives surrounded by mountains and wood, and from here he can look at a wide valley and the opposite mountains. The view inspires Michael. One day he wants to become an architect. If this doesn't work, maybe writer or artist. One more problem is that no door and no window fits into the unusual form of this huge entrance. Friends say that it's impossible to install a panorama window there because Michael is living in a cave where 10,000 years ago bears and Neanderthal people used to live.
A tortoise one day met a hare who made fun of her. My, you move so slowly, you will never get far. The tortoises, upset by the hare's manner, said, "Let's have a race and see who is faster." The hare laughed and said, "You must be joking. But all right, we'll see who reaches the other side of the hill first." Off he ran, leaving the tortoise far behind. After a while, the hare stopped to wait for the tortoise to come along. He waited and waited till he felt sleepy. "I might as well take a nap," he thought. "Even if she catches up with me, I can easily win the race." So he lay down under a shady tree and closed his eyes. When the tortoise passed the sleeping hare, she walked on slowly but steadily. By the time the hare woke up, the tortoise was near the finishing line. He ran as fast as he could, but he could not catch up with the tortoise. Slow and steady can win the race.
A dog was crossing a bridge with a bone in his mouth. He looked down and saw his reflection in the water. Thinking it was another dog with a bigger bone, he opened his mouth to grab it, only to lose his own bone in the water. This small moral story in English shows the downside of greed. Moral: greed often leads to loss.
Once upon a time lived on a cloud that was grown up over a very beautiful country. One day, she saw another much bigger cloud, and she felt so much envy. Then the cloud decided that in order to get bigger and grow more, her water would never abandon her, and will never start raining again. Indeed, the cloud grew up while his country was getting dried. First, rivers dried up, then people, animals, plants, and finally, the whole country became a desert. The cloud did not care much, but she also did not realize that by being over a desert there was no place where she could obtain new water to keep growing. So slowly, the cloud began to lose size, and was unable to do anything to stop it. The cloud then realized her mistake, and that her greed and selfishness were the cause of her vanishing. But just before evaporating, when she was just a sigh of cotton, there started blowing a gentle breeze. The cloud was so small, and weighed so little that the wind took her far away, to a faraway beautiful country, where once again she recovered her original size. Having learned this lesson, our cloud remained small and modest, but she became so generous when raining, that her new country became even greener, giving away to all people there the most beautiful rainbow in the world.
King Midas was granted a wish, and he wished that everything he touched would turn to gold. At first, he was delighted, but when he accidentally turned his food and even his daughter into gold, he realized that his greed had cost him dearly. This short story in English with moral shows the dangers of greed. Moral: greed leads to unhappiness.
Last week, my grandma died. The whole family is very sad. The funeral will take place in the late afternoon, and perhaps some of the family will join together for a dinner at a restaurant. By tradition, most of the dead are buried, but cremations are becoming more common, as some people think it's more practical. When people go to a funeral, they meet in the church first. There everybody can see the coffin, nicely decorated with wreaths and flowers. The pastor makes a speech about the life of the deceased. Then everybody meets outside. The coffin is carried by the bearers to the tomb. The family and friends follow the carriers, and at the end, the coffin is slowly dropped into a large hole. As a final goodbye, my parents and siblings throw earth on the coffin.
A princess befriends a frog who helps her recover her golden ball. In return, the princess reluctantly allows the frog to stay with her, and eventually, the frog transforms into a prince. This fairy tale teaches the value of kindness and keeping promises. Moral: kindness and keeping promises lead to happiness.
Once upon a time, there was a hungry fox that was looking for something to eat. He was very hungry. No matter how hard he tried, the fox could not find food. Finally, he went to the edge of the forest and searched there for food. Suddenly, he caught sight of a big tree with a hole in it. Inside the hole was a package. The hungry fox immediately thought that there might be food in it, and he became very happy. He jumped into the hole, and when he opened the package, he saw there were a lot of food, bread, meat and fruit in it. An old woodcutter had placed the food in the tree trunk while he cut down trees in the forest. He was going to eat it for his lunch. The fox happily began to eat. After the fox had finished eating, he felt thirsty and decided to leave the trunk and drink some water from a nearby spring. However, no matter how hard he tried, he could not get out of the hole. Do you know why? Yes, the fox had eaten so much food that he became too big to fit through the hole. The fox was very sad and upset. He told himself, "I wish that I had thought a little before jumping into the hole." Yes, children, this is the result of doing something without thinking about it first. A selfish fox once invited a stork to dinner at his home in a hollow tree. That evening, the stork flew to the fox's home and knocked on the door with her long beak. The fox opened the door and said, "Please come in and share my food." The stork was invited to sit down at the table. She was very hungry and the food smelled delicious. The fox served soup in shallow bowls and he licked up all his soup very quickly. However, the stork could not have any of it as the bowl was too shallow for her long beak. The poor stork just smiled politely and stayed hungry. The selfish fox asked, "Stork, why haven't you taken your soup? Don't you like it?" The stork replied, "It was very kind of you to invite me for dinner. Tomorrow evening, please join me for dinner at my home." The next day, when the fox arrived at the stork's home, he saw that they were also having soup for dinner. This time the soup was served in tall jugs. The stork drank the soup easily, but the fox could not reach inside the tall jug. This time it was his turn to go hungry. A selfish act can backfire on you. It was a sunny day and Fox was walking across the fields. Soon he came to a vineyard. As he came nearer, he could see some bunches of juicy grapes. The fox looked carefully around him. He had to make sure that he was safe from the hunters. He decided to steal some before anyone came along. He jumped upwards but he could not reach the grapes. He jumped again as high as he could. He still could not reach them. The grapes were just too high for him. He was not ready to give up. He backed off, took some running steps and leapt into the air towards the grapes. Again he failed to reach them. It was getting dark, and he was getting angry. His legs hurt with all that running and jumping. At last he stopped trying. As he walked away, he said to himself, "I don't really want those grapes. I'm sure they are too sour to eat." Sometimes when we cannot get what we want, we pretend that it is not worth having.
There was a rich merchant who had 4 wives. He loved the 4th wife the most and adorned her with rich robes and treated her to delicacies. He took great care of her and gave her nothing but the best. He also loved the 3rd wife very much. He's very proud of her and always wanted to show off her to his friends. However, the merchant is always in great fear that she might run away with some other men. He too loved his 2nd wife. She is a very considerate person, always patient, and in fact is the merchant's confidant. Whenever the merchant faced some problems, he always turned to his 2nd wife, and she would always help him out and tide him through difficult times. Now, the merchant's 1st wife is a very loyal partner, and has made great contributions in maintaining his wealth and business, as well as taking care of the household. However, the merchant did not love the 1st wife, and although she loved him deeply, he hardly took notice of her. One day, the merchant fell ill. Before long, he knew that he was going to die soon. He thought of his luxurious life and told himself, "Now I have 4 wives with me, but when I die, I'll be alone. How lonely I'll be." Thus, he asked the 4th wife, "I loved you most, endowed you with the finest clothing, and showered great care over you. Now that I'm dying, will you follow me and keep me company?" "No way," replied the 4th wife, and she walked away without another word. The answer cut like a sharp knife right into the merchant's heart. The sad merchant then asked the 3rd wife, "I have loved you so much for all my life. Now that I'm dying, will you follow me and keep me company?" "No," replied the 3rd wife. "Life is so good over here. I'm going to remarry when you die." The merchant's heart sank and turned cold. He then asked the 2nd wife, "I always turn to you for help, and you've always helped me out. Now I need your help again. When I die, will you follow me and keep me company?" "I'm sorry, I can't help you out this time," replied the 2nd wife. "At the very most, I can only send you to your grave." The answer came like a bolt of thunder, and the merchant was devastated. Then a voice called out, "I'll leave with you. I'll follow you no matter where you go." The merchant looked up, and there was his 1st wife. She was so skinny, almost like she suffered from malnutrition. Greatly grieved, the merchant said, "I should have taken much better care of you while I could have." Actually, we all have 4 wives in our lives. A. The 4th wife is our body. No matter how much time and effort we lavish in making it look good, it'll leave us when we die. B. Our 3rd wife? Our possessions, status, and wealth. When we die, they all go to others. C. The 2nd wife is our family and friends. No matter how close they had been there for us when we were alive, the furthest they can stay by us is up to the grave. D. The 1st wife is in fact our soul, often neglected in our pursuit of material, wealth, and sensual pleasure. Guess what? It is actually the only thing that follows us wherever we go. Perhaps it's a good idea to cultivate and strengthen it now rather than to wait until we're on our deathbed to lament.
This morning I finally arrived by plane, for my first time in England. I am going to stay here for about a year. I came here to find work. It seems as though this country is very well organized. There is a lot of public transportation available and the streets are clean. The cars drive on the left side of the road. The supermarkets are well stocked also. I think the British are very polite people. I have noticed courtesies such as waiting patiently in line and apologizing on every occasion. It seems to be very common. In my country, the people are also nice, but more affectionate.
I could hardly sleep that night and woke up at 4:30. I was worried because of the first day at work as the head of the operations department. I doubted if I would be able to make a great first impression. I took a shower and had a light breakfast. The weather was not good for jogging, so I did some workout indoors. After that I got dressed. I put on my gray suit, which gave me a professional look and made me feel confident. On my way to work I again had uneasy thoughts about meeting my colleagues. To reduce tension I tried to focus on the present moment and made a few business calls. When I almost got to the office building, the secretary called me and told that my room was being repaired. She said, "Your office room needed some renovation. It is being redecorated now. Please, wait a little." I got a bit anxious, but I decided to stay calm and have some coffee. After a while the secretary invited me in. "Your room has already been prepared." It was a bright and spacious room in light colors with all the necessary equipment. There was a computer with a huge monitor, a Wi-Fi, a printer, a telephone, and a big chair. It was a dream office. Then I had to introduce myself to my new team. I felt nervous. I was afraid that everyone would be whispering and staring at me. But my fears immediately disappeared with the very first person who came in. It was the graphic designer Sandy, who started telling me about herself. We had a friendly conversation and I found out that we have a lot in common. Outside of work, she enjoyed doing yoga and jogging, and she was surprised to know that I run 4 to 5 miles a day too. We even arranged to have lunch together. I was quite satisfied on how my first day at work started and was sure that the rest of it would go smoothly as well. A father had a family of sons who were perpetually quarreling among themselves. When he failed to heal their disputes by his exhortations, he determined to give them a practical illustration of the evils of disunion, and for this purpose he one day told them to bring him a bundle of sticks. When they had done so, he placed the faggot into the hands of each of them in succession, and ordered them to break it in pieces. They tried with all their strength, and were not able to do it. He next opened the faggot, took the sticks separately, one by one, and again put them into his sons' hands, upon which they broke them easily. He then addressed them in these words: "My sons, if you are of one mind, and unite to assist each other, you will be as this faggot, uninjured by all the attempts of your enemies, but if you are divided among yourselves, you will be broken as easily as these sticks. In union there is strength. Divided we fall, united we stand." Finding that cranes were destroying his newly sown corn, a farmer one evening set a net in his field to catch the destructive birds. When he went to examine the net next morning he found a number of cranes and also a stork. "Release me, I beseech you," cried the stork, "for I have eaten none of your corn, nor have I done you any harm. I am a poor innocent stork, as you may see, a most dutiful bird. I honor my father and mother. But the farmer cut him short. "All this may be true enough, I dare say, but I have caught you with those were destroying my crops, and you must suffer with the company in which you are found. People are judged by the company they keep.
A farmer found a snake freezing in the snow and took pity on it, warming it by the fire. Once revived, the snake bit the farmer. This moral story in English teaches that kindness is not always returned, and it is important to be cautious when helping others. Moral: ingratitude is repaid with harm.
Jan Schultz is a romantic person. Although he has been already 18 years old at that time, he was more interested in history books than in young ladies, other than his friends and classmates. When he didn't sleep or he wasn't busy with his homework, he used to doze on the sofa and was dreaming of having lots of money one day. One afternoon he fell asleep on the couch. He had a lively dream. He dreamed to have found a treasure on an island. As he found the chest, he opened it and a little cloud of smoke came out. The smoke formed itself into a mouth and an old voice said, "Get up, go to the forest, you'll find a map there. The map will be buried beneath an old pine tree. Dig a hole where you'll see some smoke fuming. It's a treasure map. You can become rich if you find the map." The smoke came closer to his face. All of a sudden Jan couldn't breathe anymore, and he thought to be choking. Jan remembered that this day was Sunday and it must already have been afternoon. It was already autumn, fog racked over the landscape. Behind the house a path began, which led directly to the forest. He followed the track and he didn't even go 100 meters, as he already saw the pine tree and besides he could see fine, white smoke rising to the sky. Jan dug into the soil and found a little tube and inside he found a rolled-up scroll. It looked like a Buddhist map or a scroll. He rolled it up and went home. The next day he went directly after school to a shop, where gold and other objects of value could be sold. He didn't get any money for the map. John went home, lied on the couch, and fell asleep. He dreamed that he would never need any money. As he woke up he glanced smiling at the treasure map. The money and the treasure weren't important to him anymore.
Two men were walking along one summer day. Soon it became too hot to go any further, and, seeing a large plane tree nearby, they threw themselves on the ground to rest in its shade. Gazing up into the branches, one man said to the other, "What a useless tree this is! It does not have fruit or nuts that we can eat, and we cannot even use its wood for anything." "Don't be so ungrateful," rustled the tree in reply. "I am being extremely useful to you at this very moment, shielding you from the hot sun. And you call me a good-for-nothing." All of God's creations have a good purpose. Islam teaches us that we should never belittle Allah's blessings.
Carlos was born and raised in Veracruz, Mexico, but he has been living in New Jersey for over a decade. Since he had an accident and no one could help take care of him, he decided to go back to his country and live there with his family. Now he is a tour guide for American tourists in Cancun. When the cruise ships come, there are virtually thousands of English-speaking tourists who not only want to see the beaches and restaurants, but are keen to explore the countryside and what the surrounding culture has to offer. Carlos accepts group tours as well as individual tourists. He is quite popular and made himself a name as a knowledgeable guide, who has gained a small fan community on various online travel platforms. The tours usually start early in the morning and last until late afternoon. Many tourists wonder how Carlos speaks English without an accent. He tells them a little about himself, but that usually leads to more private questions. Carlos is not oblivious. For each question, he has prepared a perfect answer. This is something he had learned in the U.S.
Boy and his brother slept in a bunk bed. He had the bottom bunk. His brother had the top bunk. The top bunk had a guard rail. The rail kept the sleeper safe. His brother didn't like the rail. He always left it down. One time his brother fell out of the top bunk. He hit the carpet and woke up. He said, "Ouch." Then he climbed back into the top bunk. When he woke up the next day, his back was sore. Mom took him to see the doctor. The doctor examined him. The doctor said he was okay. He said to keep the guard rail up. His brother said he would do that. That night his brother climbed into the top bunk again. He left the guard rail down. He said the guard rail was like jail. He didn't want to feel like he was in jail. He fell asleep. Then he fell out of the top bunk again.
One day, in the jungle, a set of bathroom scales appeared. The animals played with it for quite some time until a parrot who had escaped from the zoo explained to them how it worked. All the animals took turns to weigh themselves. At first this was a big game. Every day each animal would see how much weight they had gained or lost. However, before long, many animals began to obsess about their weight. The first thing they would do each day would be to run to the scales, weigh themselves, and spend the rest of the day with a grumpy expression on their faces. This because, no matter what the scales said, the animals always weighed the same, in other words, more than they wanted to. As the months passed, the scales began to suffer the animals' disapproval. The scales were regularly kicked, or given poisonous looks. One day, the scales decided that from the following morning things would have to change. That morning, the first to run to weigh itself was the zebra. However, as soon as it stepped onto the scales began tickling the zebra's hooves. Soon the scales found just the right spot, and the zebra couldn't stop giggling. This was so much fun for the zebra that from that day on it no longer worried about its weight, and off it went to happily eat its breakfast for the first time in ages. The same happened to whoever went to weigh themselves that day, so that, before long, no one was worried any longer about their weight. Rather, they all commented on how much fun the scales and its tickling were. As the months and the years passed, the scales stopped reading weight and began reading good humor and optimism instead. Soon everyone happily discovered that this was a much better indicator of beauty and a person's value. Finally, in the jungle everyone forgot about that antiquated and old-fashioned measurement known as the kilo.
One day some wise men, who were going about the country trying to find answers to some of the great questions of their time, came to Nasreddin's district and asked to see the wisest man in the place. Nasreddin was brought forward, and a big crowd gathered to listen. The first wise man began by asking, "Where is the exact center of the world?" "It is under my right heel," answered Nasreddin. "How can you prove that?" asked the first wise man. "If you don't believe me," answered Nasreddin, "measure and see." The first wise man had nothing to answer to that, so the second wise man asked his question. "How many stars are there in the sky?" he said. "As many as there are hairs on my donkey," answered Nasreddin. "What proof have you got of that?" asked the second wise man. "If you don't believe me," answered Nasreddin, "count the hairs on my donkey and you will see." "That's foolish talk," said the other. "How can one count the hairs on a donkey?" "Well," answered Nasreddin, "how can one count the stars in the sky?" "If one is foolish talk, so is the other." The second wise man was silent. The third wise man was becoming annoyed with Nasreddin and his answers, so he said, "You seem to know a lot about your donkey, so can you tell me how many hairs there are in its tail?" "Yes," answered Nasreddin. "There are exactly as many hairs in its tail as there are in your beard." "How can you prove that?" said the other. "I can prove it very easily," answered Nasreddin. "You can pull one hair out of my donkey's tail for every one I pull out of your beard. If the hairs on my donkey's tail do not come to an end at exactly the same time as the hairs in your beard, I will admit that I was wrong." Of course, the third wise man was not willing to do this, so the crowd declared Nasreddin the winner of the day's arguments. There was a green and fresh pasture, in which 3 cows lived, a white cow, a black cow and a reddish-brown one. The cows were kind to each other. They were nice to each other. They used to graze in the meadow together. And they used to sleep near each other. Till it happened one day, the reddish-brown colored lion of the forest happened to pass that way. The lion was unhappy. It was hungry, and was looking for a prey. On catching sight of the cows it became glad, but couldn't attack them, because they were together. So, the lion sat in a corner and waited till the cows would separate from each other. The cows were together and wouldn't part away from each other, because they knew that if they were together, no predator could attack them. The lion lay in ambush nearby for 2 or 3 days. But the cows continued to remain together, and wouldn't separate from each other. The lion became unhappy. A plan occurred to it. It went towards the cows, greeted the man, said, "How are you, my friends? Are you fine? I have been remembering you for a long time, but because I am too busy, I can't come to you and ask about your health. Today I said to myself, anyhow I should come and see you from near and visit you." The reddish-brown cow said, "Sir, your coming has really pleased us and brightened our pasture." The lion said, "I have always remembered you, and have even ordered a better pasture made ready for you." Reddish-brown cow said, "Sir, you have really obliged us and we are very thankful to you." Both the white and the black cows were troubled by what their friend, the reddish-brown cow, said, and were grieved at its thoughtlessness. They feared lest it should be deceived. They said to each other, "Which forest has not got a better pasture? Why does the reddish-brown cow believe what the lion says? Doesn't it know that lions seek other animals only to prey on them?" The reddish-brown cow became more and more a close friend of the lion each day. The black cow and the white cow advised it as much as they could, but with no avail. One day the lion said to the reddish-brown cow, "You know that the color of our bodies is dark and that the color of the body of the white cow is light, and you also know that the light color is the opposite of the dark color. It would be very good if I eat the white cow, so that there will be no difference among us any longer and that we will be able to live together well." The reddish-brown cow accepted the saying of the selfish lion and started talking to the black cow to keep it busy, so that the lion could eat the white cow with more ease. The white cow was left alone and was killed, while the black and the reddish-brown cows were busy with idle talks. 2 or 3 days passed since the lion had devoured the white cow. The lion, angry and uneasy, was lying in a corner, and the reddish-brown cow was moving around the lion and grazing. The lion called the reddish-brown cow. The cow answered, "Yes, sir." The lion said, "The color of my body and the color of your body are reddish-brown, and black does not go with our color. It will be very good if I eat the black cow, so that in this forest we all will be of the same color." The reddish-brown cow accepted and moved away from the black cow. The lion attacked and devoured the black cow, too. And as for the reddish-brown cow, it was so filled with joy that it didn't know what to do. It roamed and grazed and said to itself, "It is only me who has the color of the lion." A few days passed since the black cow had been devoured by the lion. The lion roared and said, "Oh, the reddish-brown cow! Where are you?" The reddish-brown cow, shaking with fear, went forward and said, "Yes, sir." The lion said, "Is your turn, get yourself ready, I am going to eat you." The reddish-brown cow, with great fear and horror, said, "Why, sir, I am your friend. I did whatever you said. So why do you want to eat me?" The lion roared and said, "Friend of a friendless. How is it possible that a lion makes friendship with a cow?" No matter how much the reddish-brown cow begged and entreated, the lion didn't accept its words. The lion attacked the cow. The cow said, "Mr. Lion, please allow me to cry out 3 times before you eat me." The lion said, "Quickly, quickly." The reddish-brown cow cried out, "I was eaten the very day the white cow was eaten. I was eaten the very day the black cow was eaten. I was eaten the very day I made with you." The lion devoured the reddish-brown cow very quickly. Then it said to itself, "I have finished my job in this forest. Now I had better go to other forests." Divide and rule policy. One hot day, a thirsty crow flew all over the fields looking for water. For a long time, she could not find any. She felt very weak, almost giving up hope. Suddenly, she saw a water jug below her. She flew straight down to see if there was any water inside. Yes, she could see some water inside the jug. The crow tried to push her head into the jug. Sadly, she found that the neck of the jug was too narrow. Then she tried to push the jug down for the water to flow out. She found that the jug was too heavy. The crow thought hard for a while. Then, looking around her, she saw some pebbles. She suddenly had a good idea. She started picking up the pebbles one by one, dropping each into the jug. As more and more pebbles filled the jug, the water level kept rising. Soon it was high enough for the crow to drink. Her plan had worked. If you try hard enough, you may soon find an answer to your problem. Once upon a time there was a man who had a big garden. He had planted many fruit trees and cared for them till they bear fruits. Now he wanted to pick up the fruits and sell them to make money for his family. One fine day while picking fruits with his son, the man saw a stranger sitting on the branch of a tree and picking the fruits. This man became angry and shouted, "Hey you! What are you doing on my tree? Aren't you ashamed of stealing fruits in the daytime?" The stranger on the branch just looked at the gardener but didn't reply, and continued picking the fruits. The gardener was very angry and shouted again, "For a whole year I have taken care of these trees. You have no right to take the fruits without my permission, so come down at once." The stranger on the tree answered, "Why should I come down? This is the garden of God and I am the servant of God, so I have the right to pick these fruits and you should not interfere between the work of God and his servant." The gardener was very surprised at this answer and thought of a plan. He called his son and said, "Go bring a rope and get this man down from the tree." His son brought the rope and the gardener ordered him to tie the stranger to the tree. The gardener then took a stick and started to beat the stranger. The stranger began to scream. "Why are you beating me? You have no right to do this." The gardener paid no attention and continued beating him. The stranger screamed, "Don't you fear God? You are beating an innocent man?" The gardener answered, "Why should I fear? This wood in my hand belongs to God and I am too the servant of God, so I have nothing to fear, and you shouldn't interfere with the work of God and his servant." The stranger hesitated and then spoke, "Wait, don't beat me, I am sorry for taking the fruits. This is your garden and I should seek your permission before taking the fruits. So, please forgive and set me free." The gardener smiled and said, "Since you have now realized your mistake, I will forgive you, but remember that God has given all his servants brains, so every person's deeds are in his own hands." Then the gardener untied him and let him go free.
Frank has recently opened a restaurant in the Bay Area, and his specialty is Spanish cuisine. Actually, the restaurant is part of his house that has also a large garden and is very spacious. One night, just when he wanted to close, a young couple came in. His wife, who works in the kitchen, wondered why her husband is still letting guests in. "Frank, the kitchen is already closed, besides, we don't have enough in the refrigerator to cook 2 more meals." Frank shakes his head. "We do. I still have a rabbit in there." "But most people don't like rabbit," his wife complains. "I know a very old recipe from an old cookbook. Just let me try." "How long does it take until you have cooked this recipe?" "It will take about an hour. I still have to pull off the fur, since I shot the rabbit in the garden myself earlier."
Once upon a time, a hippopotamus lived in a river next to a big and solitary tree. One day, a bird came and nested in the tree. The songs and the flight of the bird caused such envy in the hippo that he couldn't think of anything else. Every day he would lament the fact that he had been born a hippo. This, despite the many times the bird told the hippo he was so lucky to be so big and such a good swimmer. Finally, the hippo made his mind up that he would come out of the river, climb the tree, go out to perch on a branch, and start singing. However, when he tried to climb the tree, it was all too clear that the hippo didn't have wings, nor claws to climb with, and neither could he hop. Realizing that he would never manage it, he angrily rammed his whole weight against the tree until it came crashing to the ground. Then, triumphantly, he stepped onto the leaves of the fallen tree and began singing. Unfortunately, hippos can't sing either. All that came from his mouth were horrible noises, and when the other animals heard this, they all gathered round to make fun of the hippo standing on the branch of a fallen tree, trying to sing like a bird. He was so embarrassed by this that he decided to never again regret being a hippo. He also felt bad about having knocked the tree over. He used all his strength to raise the tree back up again, replant it, and look after it until it had completely recovered.
There was a young couple who led a very happy life together. The only thing that they worried about was whether their happiness would last forever or would they too would have to face problems. One day, they heard that a wise old man had come to town. He could solve all kinds of problems and guide people. So the couple decided to visit the wise old man and tell him their source of worry. The wise old man told them, travel around the world and seek a man and a woman who are perfectly happy as a couple. When you find such a couple, ask them for a piece of cloth from the man's shirt, then keep that piece of cloth with you, and you always remain happy. The young couple began their journey to find the happiest couple in their world. In one place they heard that the governor and his wife were the happiest people, so they went to their palace and asked them, "Are you the happiest couple?" The governor and his wife replied, "Yes, we are happy in every way except for one thing, we do not have any children." Well, that didn't make the governor and his wife the happiest couple. So they continued their journey. They arrived in one city where they had heard that the happiest couple lived. They went to their house and asked them, "Are you the happiest couple?" The couple replied, "Yes, we are really happy in every way except that we have too many children which make our life a bit uncomfortable." No, this couple did not sound to be the happiest. And so they continued their journey. They visited many countries, cities, towns and villages asking the same question, but they did not find what they were looking for. One day the young couple came across a shepherd in the desert. The shepherd was grazing his sheep when his wife and child came along. The shepherd greeted his wife and gently patted the child she was carrying. She laid the mat and started to eat contentedly. The young couple came to them and asked them, "Are you the happiest couple?" The shepherd and his wife replied, "Nobody is unhappier than the king." The young couple immediately realized that they were the happiest couple and asked them for a piece of the shepherd's shirt, so that their happiness too would last throughout. The shepherd said, "If I give you a piece of cloth from my shirt, then I will be left without any clothes since I own just one shirt." The young couple at once understood that it is very difficult to find perfect happiness anywhere in the world. The couple decided to return to their own country. They went to the wise old man and related all that had taken place. They also complained that his guidance was difficult to abide by. The wise old man laughed and said, "Was your journey useless or did you learn something from it?" The young man replied, "Yes, after this trip I have learnt that in this world, nobody is perfectly happy, only that person is happy who does everything to please God." Holy Quran 2:38 says, "And whosoever follows my, Allah's, guidance, on them shall be no fear nor shall they grieve." The wife said, "I have learnt that in order to be happy it is important to remember two things. First, all human beings should be thankful and contented with whatever they have." Holy Quran 14:7 says, "And your Lord declared publicly, if you are grateful, I will add more favors unto you." And secondly, for ultimate happiness one must always practice patience. Holy Quran 2:45 says, "Seek help through patient perseverance and prayers." After that, young couple thanked the wise old man for his guidance and returned home. The wise man prayed for them and said, "Indeed the sign of happiness is in their heart and they have good manners, and if the lifetime is spent in pleasure of God there would be no differences in the existence of mankind." Holy Quran 20:123-124 says, "Whosoever follows my, Allah's, guidance, will not lose his way or fall into misery, but whosoever turns away from my message, verily for him is a miserable life." A voyaging ship was wrecked during a storm at sea and only 2 of the men on it were able to swim to a small, desert-like island. The 2 survivors, not knowing what else to do, agreed that they had no other recourse but to pray to God. However, to find out whose prayer was more powerful, they agreed to divide the territory between them and stay on opposite sides of the island. The first thing they prayed for was food. The next morning, the first man saw a fruit-bearing tree on his side of the land, and he was able to eat its fruit. The other man's parcel of land remained barren. After a week, the first man was lonely and he decided to pray for a wife. The next day, another ship was wrecked, and the only survivor was a woman who swam to his side of the land. On the other side of the island, there was nothing. Soon the first man prayed for a house, clothes, more food. The next day, like magic, all of these were given to him. However, the second man still had nothing. Finally, the first man prayed for a ship, so that he and his wife could leave the island. In the morning, he found a ship docked at his side of the island. The first man boarded the ship with his wife and decided to leave the second man on the island. He considered the other man unworthy to receive God's blessings, since none of his prayers had been answered. As the ship was about to leave, the first man heard a voice from heaven booming, "Why are you leaving your companion on the island?" "My blessings are mine alone, since I was the one who prayed for them," the first man answered. "His prayers were all unanswered and so he does not deserve anything." "You are mistaken," the voice rebuked him. "He had only one prayer, which I answered. If not for that, you would not have received any of my blessings." "Tell me," the first man asked the voice, "what did he pray for that I should owe him anything?" "He prayed that all your prayers be answered. For all we know, our blessings are not the fruits of our prayers alone, but those of another praying for us." Once upon a time, there was a selfish man. He liked everything to be his own. He could not share his belongings with anyone, not even his friends or the poor. One day, the man lost 30 gold coins. He went to his friend's house and told him how he lost his gold coins. His friend was a kind man. As his friend's daughter was coming from an errand, she found 30 gold coins. When she arrived home, she told her father what she had found. The girl's father told her that the gold coins belonged to his friend and he sent for him. When the selfish man arrived, he told him how his daughter had found his 30 gold coins and handed them to him. After counting the gold coins, the man said that 10 of them was missing and had been taken by the girl as he had 40 gold coins. He further commented that he will recover the remaining amount from him. But the girl's father refused. The man left the gold coins and went to the court and informed the judge there about what had taken place between him and the girl's father. The judge sent for the girl and her father, and when they arrived asked the girl how many gold coins did she find. She replied 30 gold coins. The judge that asked the selfish man how many gold coins did he lose, and he answered 40 gold coins. The judge then told the man that the gold coins did not belong to him because the girl found 30 and not 40 as he claimed to have lost, and then told the girl to take the gold coins and that if anybody is looking for them he will send for the girl. The judge told the man that if anybody reports that they have found 40 gold coins he will send for him. It was then that the man confessed that he lied and that he lost 30 gold coins, but the judge did not listen to him. This story teaches us to be always honest, as dishonest never pays.
In the palace of Rubyland there was a ruby thief. No one knew who it was, and the thief had everyone so fooled that the only thing known about him was that he lived in the palace, and that when you were in the palace you should always hide your jewels. The king decided to find out who it was, and he asked for help from a wise dwarf who was famed for his intelligence. The dwarf spent some days there, watching and listening, until there was another theft. The following morning the wise dwarf made all the palace inhabitants meet up together in the same room. After inspecting them for the whole morning, and during lunch, without saying a word, the dwarf started asking them all, one by one, what they knew about the stolen jewels. Once again, it seemed that no one had been the thief. But then, suddenly, one of the gardeners began coughing, writhing and moaning, and finally he fell to the floor. The dwarf, with a cheeky smile, explained that the food they had just eaten was poisoned, and the only antidote for this poison was hidden inside the ruby that had been stolen the previous night. And he explained how, some days earlier, he himself had swapped some false rubies for the genuine ones, and that he expected that only the thief would be able to save his life, since the poison was particularly quick working. The coughs and groans spread around the room, and terror took hold of all present. All except one person. A footman didn't take long to run over to where he had hidden the jewels, from where he took the final ruby. Fortunately, he would be able to open it and drink the strange liquid inside, thus saving his life. Or so he believed, because the gardener was, in fact, one of the dwarf's assistants, and the poison was nothing more than a potion prepared by the little investigator to cause a few strong pains for a short while, but nothing more than that. And the footman, now found out, was arrested by the guards and taken immediately to court. The king, grateful, generously rewarded his wise adviser, and when he asked the dwarf what his secret was, the dwarf smiled and said, Dash, I only try to get the person knowing the truth to reveal that truth. Dash, and who knew it? If the thief had deceived everyone, Dash. No, your majesty, not everyone. Anyone can deceive everyone, but no one can deceive themselves.
A certain man planted a rose and watered it faithfully, and before it blossomed, he examined it. He saw the bud that would soon blossom, but noticed thorns upon the stem, and he thought, how can any beautiful flower come from a plant burdened with so many sharp thorns? Saddened by this thought, he neglected to water the rose, and just before it was ready to bloom, it died. So it is with many people. Within every soul there is a rose. The good qualities planted in us at birth grow amid the thorns of our faults. Many of us look at ourselves and see only the thorns, the defects. We despair, thinking that nothing good can possibly come from us. We neglect to water the good within us, and eventually it dies. We never realize our potential. Some people do not see the rose within themselves, someone else must show it to them. One of the greatest gifts a person can possess is to be able to reach past the thorns of another, and find the rose within them. This is one of the characteristics of love, to look at a person, know their true faults and accepting that person into your life, all the while recognizing the nobility in their soul. Help others to realize they can overcome their faults. If we show them the rose within themselves, they will conquer their thorns. Only then will they blossom many times over. Lessons on life. The most favorable friend to me is that who shows me my flaws. Imam Sadiq, A.S. The night fell heavy in the heights of the mountains, and the man could not see anything. All was black. Zero visibility, and the moon and the stars were covered by the clouds. As he was climbing only a few feet away from the top of the mountain, he slipped and fell into the air, falling at great speed. He could only see black spots as he went down, and the terrible sensation of being sucked by gravity. He kept falling, and in the moments of great fear, it came to his mind all the good and bad episodes of his life. He was thinking now about how close death was getting, when all of a sudden he felt the rope tied to his waist pull him very hard. His body was hanging in the air. Only the rope was holding him, and in that moment of stillness he had no other choice other to scream, "Help me, God." All of a sudden a deep voice coming from the sky answered, "What do you want me to do?" "Save me, God." "Do you really think I can save you?" "Of course I believe you can." "Then cut the rope tied to your waist." There was a moment of silence, and the man decided to hold on to the rope with all his strength. The rescue team tells that the next day a climber was found dead and frozen, his body hanging from a rope. His hands holding tight to it. Only 1 foot away from the ground. And we? How attached we are to our rope will we let go? Don't ever doubt about the words of God. We should never say that He has forgotten us or abandoned us. One beautiful spring day a red rose blossomed in a forest. Many kinds of trees and plants grew there. As the rose looked around, a pine tree nearby said, "What a beautiful flower. I wish I was that lovely." Another tree said, "Dear pine, do not be sad, we cannot have everything." The rose turned its head and remarked, "It seems that I am the most beautiful plant in this forest." A sunflower raised its yellow head and asked, "Why do you say that? In this forest there are many beautiful plants. You are just one of them." The red rose replied, "I see everyone looking at me and admiring me." Then the rose looked at a cactus and said, "Look at that ugly plant full of thorns." The pine tree said, "Red rose, what kind of talk is this? Who can say what beauty is? You have thorns too." The proud red rose looked angrily at the pine and said, "I thought you had good taste. You do not know what beauty is at all. You cannot compare my thorns to that of the cactus." What a proud flower, thought the trees. The rose tried to move its roots away from the cactus, but it could not move. As the days passed, the red rose would look at the cactus and say insulting things, like, "This plant is useless? How sorry I am to be his neighbor." The cactus never got upset, and he even tried to advise the rose, saying, "God did not create any form of life without a purpose." Spring passed, and the weather became very warm. Life became difficult in the forest, as the plants and animals needed water and no rain fell. The red rose began to wilt. One day the rose saw sparrows stick their beaks into the cactus and then fly away, refreshed. This was puzzling, and the red rose asked the pine tree what the birds were doing. The pine tree explained that the birds got water from the cactus. "Does it not hurt when they make holes?" asked the rose. "Yes, but the cactus does not like to see any birds suffer," replied the pine. The rose opened its eyes in wonder and said, "The cactus has water?" "Yes, you can also drink from it. The sparrow can bring water to you if you ask the cactus for help." The red rose felt too ashamed of its past words and behavior to ask for water from the cactus, but then it finally did ask the cactus for help. The cactus kindly agreed, and the birds filled their beaks with water and watered the rose's roots. Thus the rose learned a lesson and never judged anyone by their appearance again.
Back in the 15th century, in a tiny village near Nuremberg, lived a family with 18 children. 18! In order merely to keep food on the table for this mob, the father and head of the household, a goldsmith by profession, worked almost 18 hours a day at his trade and any other paying chore he could find in the neighborhood. Despite their seemingly hopeless condition, two of Albrecht Dürer the elder's children had a dream. They both wanted to pursue their talent for art, but they knew full well that their father would never be financially able to send either of them to Nuremberg to study at the academy. After many long discussions at night in their crowded bed, the two boys finally worked out a pact. They would toss a coin. The loser would go down into the nearby mines and, with his earnings, support his brother while he attended the academy. Then, when that brother who won the toss completed his studies, in 4 years, he would support the other brother at the academy, either with sales of his artwork or, if necessary, also by laboring in the mines. They tossed a coin on a Sunday morning after church. Albrecht Dürer won the toss and went off to Nuremberg. Albert went down into the dangerous mines and, for the next 4 years, financed his brother, whose work at the academy was almost an immediate sensation. Albrecht's etchings, his woodcuts, and his oils were far better than those of most of his professors, and by the time he graduated, he was beginning to earn considerable fees for his commissioned works. When the young artist returned to his village, the Dürer family held a festive dinner on their lawn to celebrate Albrecht's triumphant homecoming. After a long and memorable meal, punctuated with music and laughter, Albrecht rose from his honored position at the head of the table to drink a toast to his beloved brother for the years of sacrifice that had enabled Albrecht to fulfill his ambition. His closing words were, "And now, Albert, blessed brother of mine, now it is your turn. Now you can go to Nuremberg to pursue your dream, and I will take care of you." All heads turned in eager expectation to the far end of the table where Albert sat, tears streaming down his pale face, shaking his lowered head from side to side, while he sobbed and repeated, over and over, "No, no, no, no." Finally, Albert rose and wiped the tears from his cheeks. He glanced down the long table at the faces he loved, and then, holding his hands close to his right cheek, he said softly, "No, brother, I cannot go to Nuremberg. It is too late for me. Look's what 4 years in the mines have done to my hands. The bones in every finger have been smashed at least once, and lately I have been suffering from arthritis so badly in my right hand that I cannot even hold a glass to return your toast, much less make delicate lines on parchment or canvas with a pen or a brush. No, brother, for me it is too late. More than 450 years have passed. Bye now, Albert."
This morning the painters came. It was overdue as our house looked quite dilapidated. The painters brought a ladder and started to paint the outside walls. Each wall must be painted with white paint. They carry a bucket of paint, a brush, and a roll. With a roll one can paint many walls in a short amount of time. Only 1 day should be necessary for our small house. But they're not done yet. Tomorrow the interior walls in the house must be painted. The painters want to be paid immediately in cash and with no questions asked.
A doe had the misfortune to lose one of her eyes, and could not see anyone approaching her on that side. So to avoid any danger she always used to feed on a high cliff near the sea, with her sound eye looking towards the land. By this means she could see whenever the hunters approached her on land, and often escaped by this means. But the hunters found out that she was blind of one eye, and hiring a boat rowed under the cliff where she used to feed and shot her from the sea. "Ah," cried she with her dying voice. "You cannot escape your fate."
The people of Chieti thought that Marta comes from an insignificant town in the center of the Italian Abruzzo's region. The people also said that she was speaking with an accent, and lots of elderly people even said that she originally came from Romania. Sometimes Marta went to a restaurant to eat and there everyone was talking about her. Sometimes she could even hear people saying that she lives with her grown-up daughter, a young woman who allegedly goes to London next summer to study. It was also well known that Marta owned a dachshund named Max, with whom she'd take a walk at least once a day. Most of the people thought she didn't work. Marta had an open secret: she loved drinking wine. 1 to 2 bottles of red wine per day, and she preferred to drink the wine alone. In the early afternoon, she began to drink and continued drinking until evening started. Better than going to the pub and losing her reputation there, she thought. She partly had lost her reputation because in the local supermarket Aldi she could regularly be seen with a shopping cart full of wine bottles. What the people were interested in was what kind of work she had and why she lives alone. Sometimes she also seemed to be making a journey. One day before Christmas a dark vehicle parked in front of her house. Men and women in uniforms. Was it the police? We didn't know. Interestingly, a few days later another vehicle parked in front of the door. This time it was a white van. Marta wore on this dark winter's day her sunglasses and got hastily inside the vehicle, and the car disappeared. A neighbor claimed that the car had foreign plates with a tiny blue-white flag on it.
In ancient times, a king had a boulder placed on a roadway. Then he hid himself and watched to see if anyone would remove the huge rock. Some of the king's wealthiest merchants and courtiers came by and simply walked around it. Many loudly blamed the king for not keeping the roads clear, but none did anything about getting the big stone out of the way. Then a peasant came along carrying a load of vegetables. On approaching the boulder, the peasant laid down his burden and tried to move the stone to the side of the road. After much pushing and straining, he finally succeeded. As the peasant picked up his load of vegetables, he noticed a purse lying in the road where the boulder had been. The purse contained many gold coins and a note from the king indicating that the gold was for the person who removed the boulder from the roadway. The peasant learned what many others never understand. Every obstacle presents an opportunity to improve one's condition. Syed Jawad Amali, a great mujtahid, was having his dinner when someone knocked at his door. A servant from his master, Ayatollah Syed Mehdi Barul Ulum, appeared and said, "Your master has sent for you to come immediately. He has just sat down for his dinner but refuses to eat until he sees you." There was no time to lose. Syed Jawad Amali left his dinner and rushed to Ayatollah Barul Ulum's residence. Just as he entered, the master looked disapprovingly at him and said, "Syed Jawad, you have no fear of Allah. Don't you feel ashamed in front of Allah?" This came as a shock to him, as he could not remember doing anything to incur the wrath of his master. He said, "My master may guide me where I have failed." Ayatollah Barul Ulum replied, "It is now a week that your neighbor and his family are without wheat and rice." He was trying to buy some dates from a shop on credit, but the shopkeeper refused to grant him any more credit. He returned home empty-handed and the family is without a morsel of food. Syed Jawad was taken by surprise. "By Allah," he said, "I have no knowledge about this. That is why I am displeased all the more. How can you be unaware of your own neighbor? 7 days of difficulties have passed and you tell me you do not know about it. Well, if you had known and ignored him despite your knowledge, then you would not even he a Muslim," Ayatollah Ulum joined. Then he instructed him to take all the dishes of food before him to his neighbor. Sit with him to eat, so that he does not feel ashamed. And take this sum for his future ration. Place it under his pillow or carpet so that he is not humiliated, and inform me when this work is completed, for not until then shall I eat. That man is not from me who sleeps contentedly while his neighbor sleeps hungry. Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
My mother and I are watching our new neighbor. Every morning at 8 o'clock he leaves his house. We're watching him from the kitchen window. The man is young and wears a suit and tie. We think he's a man of class. He is always coming and going at a particular time. My mother also has many friends and often invites strange men into the house as well. The men are very friendly and often give my mother gifts. After their visits, we sometimes have a lot of cash on hand. Just when the men have left, we usually rush to the mall to go shopping. One day we meet the new neighbor in the supermarket. My mother smiles at the man. They start talking. The neighbor comes to our house and spends time with my mother. A month later, my mother says, "We're going to move soon. We will live with Jeff, our neighbor." I convinced him to let us live with him. What Bruno Schmidt wanted to buy originally in this German flea market was a drum. He figured that to find a decent drum he had to go to a large flea market is in a major city and usually takes place on weekends. So, it was on Sunday that he saw a large red drum on a table that also offered a lot of broken stuff and old, seemingly useless items. For some reason, the vendor didn't want to sell him the drum. "Can you not read?" the old vendor asked him. He pointed his finger at a handmade sign that said, "Take everything for €100. It seemed the man didn't want to sell only the drum. Then Bruno saw an old vintage lamp that looked really interesting, a typical lamp with a shade that one would put into the bedroom. He could use a lamp like that. Bruno asked the man if he could buy the drum and the lamp together. The old man nodded. Bruno took a closer look at the lamp. There were old decoration lines on the lampshade which also had old pergament and bright color. Then he saw what looked like a long number in the corner of the shade. Was that a tattoo? "What is the lampshade made of?" Bruno asked the man. "I don't think it's animal skin," answered the man. "I bought it myself at the flea market in Buchenwald."
A clever monkey and a crocodile became friends. One day, the crocodile's wife demanded the monkey's heart to eat. The crocodile invited the monkey for a ride on his back, planning to drown him. But the clever monkey tricked the crocodile, saying he had left his heart on a tree and escaped. This story teaches that intelligence can often overcome brute strength. Moral: cleverness can outsmart strength.
One day a young man was standing in the middle of the town proclaiming that he had the most beautiful heart in the whole valley. A large crowd gathered and they all admired his heart for it was perfect. There was not a mark or a flaw in it. Yes, they all agreed it truly was the most beautiful heart they had ever seen. The young man was very proud and boasted more loudly about his beautiful heart. Suddenly, an old man appeared at the front of the crowd and said, "Why, your heart is not nearly as beautiful as mine." The crowd and the young man looked at the old man's heart. It was beating strongly, but full of scars. It had places where pieces had been removed and other pieces put in, but they didn't fit quite right and there were several jagged edges. In fact, in some places there were deep gouges where whole pieces were missing. The people stared. How could he say his heart is more beautiful, they thought. The young man looked at the old man's heart and saw its state and laughed. "You must be joking," he said. "Compare your heart with mine. Mine is perfect and yours is a mess of scars and tears." "Yes," said the old man, "yours is perfect looking, but I would never trade with you. You see, every scar represents a person to whom I have given my love. I tear out a piece of my heart and give it to them, and often they give me a piece of their heart which fits into the empty place in my heart, but because the pieces aren't exact, I have some rough edges, which I cherish, because they remind me of the love we shared. Sometimes I have given pieces of my heart away, and the other person hasn't returned a piece of his heart to me. These are the empty gouges. Giving love is taking a chance. Although these gouges are painful, they stay open, reminding me of the love I have for these people too, and I hope someday they may return and fill the space I have waiting. So now do you see what true beauty is?" The young man stood silently with tears running down his cheeks. He walked up to the old man, reached into his perfect young and beautiful heart, and ripped a piece out. He offered it to the old man with trembling hands. The old man took his offering, placed it in his heart, and then took a piece from his old scarred heart and placed it in the wound in the young man's heart. It fit, but not perfectly, as there were some jagged edges. The young man looked at his heart, not perfect anymore but more beautiful than ever, since love from the old man's heart flowed into his. They embraced and walked away side by side. Physical perfection is not always beautiful. One day long ago, some sailors set out to sea in their sailing ship. One of them brought his pet monkey along for the long journey. When they were far out at sea, a terrible storm overturned their ship. Everyone fell into the sea, and the monkey was sure that he would drown. Suddenly a dolphin appeared and picked him up. They soon reached the island and the monkey came down from the dolphin's back. The dolphin asked the monkey, "Do you know this place?" The monkey replied, "Yes, I do. In fact, the king of the island is my best friend. Do you know that I am actually a prince?" Knowing that no one lived on the island, the dolphin said, Well, so you are a prince. Now you can be a king." The monkey asked, "How can I be a king?" As the dolphin started swimming away, he answered, "That is easy. As you are the only creature on this island, you will naturally be the king. Those who lie and boast may end up in trouble."
A miser sold all that he had and bought a lump of gold, which he buried in a hole in the ground by the side of an old wall, and went to look at daily. One of his workmen observed his frequent visits to the spot and decided to watch his movements. He soon discovered the secret of the hidden treasure, and digging down, came to the lump of gold and stole it. The miser, on his next visit, found the hole empty and began to tear his hair and to make loud lamentations. A neighbor, seeing him overcome with grief and learning the cause, said, "Pray do not grieve so, but go and take a stone and place it in the hole, and fancy that the gold is still lying there. It will do you quite the same service, for when the gold was there, you had it not, as you did not make the slightest use of it." A group of frogs were traveling through the woods, and two of them fell into a deep pit. When the other frogs saw how deep the pit was, they told the two frogs that they were as good as dead. The two frogs ignored the comments and tried to jump up out of the pit with all their might. The other frogs kept telling them to stop, that they were as good as dead. Finally, one of the frogs took heed to what the other frogs were saying and gave up. He fell down and died. The other frog continued to jump as hard as he could. Once again, the crowd of frogs yelled at him to stop the pain and just die. He jumped even harder and finally made it out. When he got out, the other frog said, "Did you not hear us?" The frog explained to them that he was deaf. He thought they were encouraging him the entire time. This story teaches two lessons. 1. There is power of life and death in the tongue. An encouraging word to someone who is down can lift them up and help them make it through the day. 2. A destructive word to someone who is down can be what it takes to kill them. Be careful of what you say. Speak life to those who cross your path. The power of words. It is sometimes hard to understand that an encouraging word can go such a long way. Anyone can speak words that tend to rob another of the spirit to continue in difficult times. Special is the individual who will take the time to encourage another.
The two sisters Lizzie and Lucy have their own successful business, a flower shop which attracts customers by fresh and beautiful flower bouquets for every occasion. The sisters have been nearly inseparable from their early childhood and have felt happy and blessed with their friendship. They were brought up by their mother, as their father died when they were small. They have been together all the time, sharing many hobbies and interests and being an incredible source of support to each other. Lucy is married to a wealthy manufacturer, George. The couple lives a joyful life raising their sweet daughter. Lizzie hasn't tied the knot yet. One day when the sisters were busy arranging orders for their permanent client's wedding, a stranger bought almost half of all the flowers in the shop. To their surprise, all of them were presented as a gift to Lizzie. As the purchase was made online, they didn't know the buyer's identity. In the evening, Lizzie received an email from her former classmate Theo, in which he was asking her for a date. She hadn't heard of him since they left college. Theo was thought to have moved to Asia and settled there. Lizzie gladly accepted his invitation, as they were good friends at college and liked each other. When talking to her mother that evening, Lizzie could hardly resist the temptation of telling her about dating Theo, but decided to keep it secret and stayed silent. Lizzie and Theo met on Saturday morning and took a scenic day trip of skating in the countryside. It was a perfect date that any girl could just dream of. Not only Theo made her laugh a lot, but there was a romantic spark between them. They had fun together and he went out of his way to make her feel special and show his affection. The next day Lizzie told her sister, "Theo is intelligent, honorable, honest and reliable, with such a great sense of humor. I think I have found my Mr. Right."
Your grandma told you not to lie. Your grandpa told you not to lie. Your mother said to tell the truth. Your father said to tell the truth. You try to tell the truth. You try to tell the truth all the time. But you cannot tell the truth all the time. No one can tell the truth all the time. Everyone lies sometimes. Your mother lies sometimes. Your father lies sometimes. Your teacher lies sometimes. You lie sometimes. You lie to be polite. You lie to protect someone you love. You lie to protect yourself. You lie when you get caught. You lie to get something you want. You lie to be popular. You lie to avoid work. You lie to your family. You lie to your friends. You lie to strangers. It's normal to lie. Some people say that lying is bad. They say that lying is evil. They say that they never lie. That is a big lie. Of course, they lie sometimes. Everyone lies sometimes. Lying is like laughing. It is part of life.
One day a father of a very wealthy family took his son on a trip to the country with the purpose of showing his son how the poor people lived so he could be thankful for his wealth. They spent a couple of days and nights on the farm of what would be considered a very poor family. On their return from their trip, the father asked his son, "How was the trip?" "It was great, Dad." "Did you see how poor people can be?" the father asked. "Oh yeah," said the son. "So what did you learn from the trip?" asked the father. The son answered, "I saw that we have one dog and they had four. We have a pool that reaches to the middle of our garden and they have a creek that has no end. We have imported lanterns in our garden and they have the stars at night. Our patio reaches to the front yard and they have the whole horizon. We have a small piece of land to live on and they have fields that go beyond our sight. We have servants who serve us, but they serve others. We buy our food, but they grow theirs. We have walls around our property to protect us, they have friends to protect them." With this the boy's father was speechless. Then his son added, "Thanks Dad for showing me how poor we are."
Our son is already 6 years old. It's time that he learns some of the traffic rules since he loves riding his bicycle through the neighborhood. We tell him, if he crosses a street he must look to his right side first. Then he must check his left side, and only when no cars are coming is he allowed to cross the street. Especially when he sees a stop sign or a traffic light he must be very careful. If he sees a red light for pedestrians, he must stop and wait until it turns green. Some areas even have a few bicycle lanes, something that is kind of new to us, but even with those lanes, kids must be careful to use them and never speed.
Once there were 3 trees on a hill in the woods. They were discussing their hopes and dreams when the first tree said, "Someday I hope to be a treasure chest. I could be filled with gold, silver, and precious gems. I could be decorated with intricate carving and everyone would see the beauty." Then the second tree said, "Someday I will be a mighty ship. I will take kings and queens across the waters and sail to the corners of the world. Everyone will feel safe in me because of the strength of my hull." Finally, the third tree said, "I want to grow to be the tallest and straightest tree in the forest. People will see me on top of the hill and look up to my branches and think of the heavens and God and how close to them I am reaching. I will be the greatest tree of all time and people will always remember me." After a few years of praying that their dreams would come true, a group of woodsmen came upon the trees. When one came to the first tree, he said, "This looks like a strong tree. I think I should be able to sell the wood to a carpenter." And he began cutting it down. The tree was happy, because he knew that the carpenter would make him into a treasure chest. At the second tree, a woodsman said, "This looks like a strong tree. I should be able to sell it to the shipyard." The second tree was happy because he knew he was on his way to becoming a mighty ship. When the woodsman came upon the third tree, the tree was frightened because he knew that if they cut him down, his dreams would not come true. One of the woodsmen said, "I don't need anything special for my tree, so I'll take this one." And he cut it down. When the first tree arrived at the carpenter's, he was made into a feed box for animals. He was then placed in a barn and filled with hay. This was not at all what he had prayed for. The second tree was cut and made into a small fishing boat. His dreams of being a mighty ship and carrying kings had come to an end. The third tree was cut into large pieces and left alone in the dark. The years went by, and the trees forgot about their dreams. Then one day, a man and woman came to the barn. She gave birth, and they placed the baby in the hay in the feed box that was made from the first tree. The man wished that he could have made a crib for the baby, but this manger would have to do. The tree could feel the importance of this event and knew that it had held the greatest treasure of all time. Years later, a group of men got in the fishing boat made from the second tree. One of them was tired and went to sleep. While they were out on the water, a great storm arose, and the tree didn't think it was strong enough to keep the men safe. The men woke the sleeping man, and he stood and said, "Peace," and the storm stopped. At this time, the tree knew that it had carried the King of Kings in its boat. Finally, someone came and got the third tree. It was carried through the streets as the people mocked the man who was carrying it. When they came to a stop, the man was nailed to the tree and raised in the air to die at the top of a hill. When Sunday came, the tree came to realize that it was strong enough to stand at the top of the hill and be as close to God as was possible, because Jesus had been crucified on it. The moral of this story is that when things don't seem to be going your way, always know that God has a plan for you. If you place your trust in Him, He will give you great gifts. Each of the trees got what they wanted, just not in the way they had imagined. We don't always know what God's plans are for us. We just know that His ways are not our ways, but His ways are always best.
The mailman put the mail in the mailbox. Dad went outside. He said hello to the mailman. The mailman said hello. Dad opened the mailbox and took out a magazine and 2 letters. One letter was from his sister. The other letter was from his brother. The magazine was for his wife. It was a garden magazine. His wife liked to work in the garden. She grew flowers and vegetables in the garden. Dad went back into the house. He opened both letters. His sister invited him to a birthday party. His brother invited him to a wedding. Dad enjoyed reading the letters. He enjoyed getting the invitations. He picked up the phone. He left a message for his sister. He would come to the birthday party. He also called his brother. He said he would come to the wedding.
"Who did this?" asked my teacher. 30 children tried to think about not only what they had done, but also what our teacher may have found out. "Who did this?" asked my teacher once more. She wasn't really asking, she was demanding an answer. She seldom became angry, but she was this time. She held up a piece of broken glass and asked, "Who broke this window?" Oh, I thought. I was the one who broke the window. I had not done it intentionally. It was caused by an errant throw of a baseball. I was working on my knuckleball. It needed more work. Why did it have to be me? It wasn't really my fault. If I admitted guilt, I would be in a lot of trouble. How would I be able to pay for a big window like that? I didn't even get an allowance. My father is going to have a fit, I thought. I didn't want to raise my hand, but some force much stronger than I was pulled it skyward. I told the truth. I did it. I said no more. It was hard enough saying what I had. My teacher went to one of our library shelves and took down a book. She then began walking towards my desk. I had never seen my teacher to strike a student, but I feared she was going to start with me and she was going to use a book for the swatting. "I know how you like birds," she said as she stood looking down at my guilt-ridden face. "Here is that field guide about birds that you are constantly checking out. It is yours. It's time we got a new one for the school anyway. The book is yours and you will not be punished as long as you remember that I am not rewarding you for your misdeed, I am rewarding you for your truthfulness. Do not be like persons on whom advice has no effect, they require punishments to improve them. A sensible man acquires guidance through advice, while brutes and beasts always improve through punishments." Imam Ali, A.S.
Today begins my holiday and I will take a flight to visit my family. At 11 o'clock a taxi picks me up to take me to the airport. The taxi ride takes about 1 hour and will cost me around $60. After that, I still have enough time until my flight departs. I have already packed my suitcase. Packing is no child's game, with everything needing to be planned and considered. If I forget something, I will probably have to buy it at some expense at my destination. It is already 1 minute before 11 and I am getting impatient. Finally, the taxi arrives. The driver helps me to carry my suitcase from the house to the car. I take the back seat and watch the meter charge me $1 for every 100 yards or so. Sometimes they offer fixed rates but not this company. I think it's different in every city and state. Anyway, as we arrive I give the driver a tip since he didn't take unnecessary detours. I remember when I was a kid I spent some time in Germany. I even went to school there. In this country, trains are an essential part of daily transportation. We were a group of 4 children and it was winter with a lot of snow. Irma was one of the smaller children. At that time she was only 11 years old. We made a trip by train from Munich to a smaller city. It was a nice and modern train, and we had even our own compartment. We heard somebody knocking on the door. It was the ticket inspector, a man in uniform, just to see if we had bought tickets. One by one he inspected the tickets, but Irma was nervously searching her bag. She couldn't find her ticket. The inspector asked for her identification, then told her to follow him. At that time the train had stopped at a little town. We waited for Irma to return but nothing happened. Suddenly the train moved and through the window, we could see Irma standing by herself frightened at the train station. But Irma looked different. Then we noticed that Irma was just standing there without her jacket. She had left it at her seat and apparently, the inspector had kicked her off the train, letting her practically freeze to death at the station.
Anthony was a very lazy boy and always used to postpone things. One day his father called him and made him understand the value of time, that one should always do things on time. Anthony promised his father that he would never postpone things. One day, he came to know that he had won the first prize in a singing competition that was held the previous month. He was asked to collect the prize the same day. He didn't care and went to collect the prize the next day. But the prize became useless for him, as it was a ticket to a circus show, which was held the previous day. Anthony learned a lesson from this incident.
Abdullah ibn Masud had been one of the close companions of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and had developed into being a distinguished and zealous personality of Islam. During the caliphate of Hazrat Uthman, he suffered a bout of illness, which eventually resulted in his death. Hazrat Uthman once came to pay him a visit and finding him distressed, asked, "What distresses you so greatly?" "My sins," he answered. "Tell me your wish so that I can fulfill it for you." "I desire God mercy," replied Ibn Masud. The caliph asked, "If you permit, I could call for the doctor." "It is the doctor who has made me sick," replied Ibn Masud. "If you want, I could present you with gifts from the public treasury." Ibn Masud retorted, "At the time when I was in need, you did not give me a thing, and now that I am not in need, you wish to shower me with presents." Hazrat Uthman insisted, "Let these gifts be for your daughters then." "They are not in need of your presents," Ibn Masud replied tersely. "I have instructed them to recite the chapter Al-Waqiyah every night, for surely, I have heard the holy prophet, peace be upon him, say, one who recites the chapter Al-Waqi'ah every night, shall never be afflicted by poverty. The honor of a mu'min lies in night worship and his esteem lies in his being independent of the people. Imam Sadiq, as, prayer reverts both what has been destined and what has not been destined. Imam Musa, A.S.
A frail old man went to live with his son, daughter-in-law, and a 4-year-old grandson. The old man's hands trembled, his eyesight was blurred, and his step faltered. The family ate together nightly at the dinner table. But the elderly grandfather's shaky hands and failing sight made eating rather difficult. Peas rolled off his spoon onto the floor. When he grasped the glass, often milk spilled on the tablecloth. The son and daughter-in-law became irritated with the mess. "We must do something about grandfather," said the son. "I've had enough of his spilled milk, noisy eating, and food on the floor." So the husband and wife set a small table in the corner. There, grandfather ate alone while the rest of the family enjoyed dinner at the dinner table. Since grandfather had broken a dish or two, his food was served in a wooden bowl. Sometimes, when the family glanced in grandfather's direction, he had a tear in his eye as he ate alone. Still, the only words the couple had for him were sharp admonitions when he dropped a fork or spilled food. The 4-year-old watched it all in silence. One evening before supper, the father noticed his son playing with scraps on the floor. He asked the child sweetly, "What are you making?" Just as sweetly, the boy responded, "Oh, I am making a little bowl for you and Mama to eat your food from when I grow up." The 4-year-old smiled and went back to work. The words so struck the parents that they were speechless. Then tears started to stream down their cheeks. Though no word was spoken, both knew what must be done. That evening the husband took grandfather's hand and gently led him back to the family table. For the remainder of his days, he ate every meal with the family. And for some reason, neither husband nor wife seemed to care any longer when a fork was dropped, milk spilled, or the tablecloth soiled. Children are remarkably perceptive. Their eyes ever observe, their ears ever listen, and their minds ever process the messages they absorb. If they see us patiently provide a happy home atmosphere for family members, they will imitate that attitude for the rest of their lives. The wise parent realizes that every day that building blocks are being laid for the child's future. Let us all be wise builders and role models. Take care of yourself and those you love, today and every day. One day a wolf found a sheepskin. He covered himself with the sheepskin and got into a flock of sheep grazing in a field. He thought, "The shepherd will shut the sheep in the pen after sunset. At night, I will run away with a fat sheep and eat it." All went well till the shepherd shut the sheep in the pen and left. The wolf waited patiently for the night to advance and grow darker. But then an unexpected thing happened. One of the servants of the shepherd entered the pen. His master had sent him to bring a fat sheep for supper. As luck would have it, the servant picked up the wolf dressed in the sheepskin. That night the shepherd and his guests had the wolf for supper. Moral: an evil design has an evil end.
A lamb was grazing with a flock of sheep one day. She soon found some sweet grass at the edge of the field. Farther and farther she went, away from the others. She was enjoying herself so much that she did not notice a wolf coming nearer to her. However, when it pounced on her, she was quick to start pleading, "Please, please don't eat me yet. My stomach is full of grass. If you wait a while, I will taste much better." The wolf thought that was a good idea, so he sat down and waited. After a while, the lamb said, "If you allow me to dance, the grass in my stomach will be digested faster." Again the wolf agreed. While the lamb was dancing, she had a new idea. She said, "Please take the bell from around my neck. If you ring it as hard as you can, I will be able to dance even faster." The wolf took the bell and rang it as hard as he could. The shepherd heard the bell ringing and quickly sent his dogs to find the missing lamb. The barking dogs frightened the wolf away and saved the lamb's life. The gentle and weak can sometimes be cleverer than fierce and strong.
A wise owl lived in an old oak tree. The more he saw, the less he spoke, and the less he spoke, the more he heard. This story teaches the importance of listening and observing to gain wisdom. Moral: knowledge comes with time and patience.
Once the wind and the sun had an argument. "I am stronger than you," said the wind. "No, you are not," said the sun. Just at that moment they saw a traveler walking across the road. He was wrapped in a shawl. The sun and the wind agreed that whoever could separate the traveler from his shawl was stronger. The wind took the first turn. He blew with all his might to tear the traveler's shawl from his shoulders. But the harder he blew, the tighter the traveler gripped the shawl to his body. The struggle went on till the wind's turn was over. Now it was the sun's turn. The sun smiled warmly. The traveler felt the warmth of the smiling sun. Soon he let the shawl fall open. The sun's smile grew warmer and warmer, hotter and hotter. Now the traveler no longer needed his shawl. He took it off and dropped it on the ground. The sun was declared stronger than the wind. Moral: brute force can't achieve what a gentle smile can.
The wind and the sun had a contest to see who could make a man remove his coat. The wind blew hard, but the man only held on to his coat tighter. The sun shone gently, and the man soon removed his coat. This English story for kids teaches that kindness often wins over force. Moral: gentle persuasion is more effective than force.
In a garden filled with bushes, out from between a load of grass and weeds, there appeared, as if from nowhere, a white rose. It was as white as driven snow, its petals looked like velvet, and the morning dew shone from its leaves like resplendent crystals. The flower couldn't see herself, so she had no idea how pretty she was. And so it was that she spent the few days of her life, until wilting set on, without knowing that all around her were amazed by her and her perfection, her perfume, the softness of her petals, her elegance. She didn't realize that everyone who saw her spoke well of her. The weeds that surrounded her were fascinated by her beauty, and lived in a state of enchantment at her aroma and appearance. One hot, sunny day, a girl was strolling through the garden, thinking about how many lovely things Mother Nature has given us, when she suddenly saw a white rose in a forgotten part of the garden. The rose was beginning to fade and wilt. It's days since it rained, she thought. If the rose stays here till tomorrow, it'll be totally withered. I'll take it home and put it in the lovely vase I got as a present. And so she did. With all her love, she put the wilting white rose in water, inside a lovely colorful glass vase, and placed it by the window. I'll put it here, she thought, so the flower can get some sun. What the young girl didn't realize was that the reflection from the window meant that, for the first time, the rose got to see herself and what she looked like. Is that me? Thought the rose. Little by little her drooping leaves began to rise, once again stretching up towards the sun, and, gradually, the rose recovered her former appearance. When she was totally back to her best, she looked at her reflection, and saw that she was indeed a beautiful flower. She thought, wow! Till now I hadn't realized who I was. How could I have been so blind? The rose came to realize she had spent her days without appreciating her beauty, unable to see herself, unable to know who she really was. If you really want to know who you are, forget everything that's around you, and just look into your heart. Gale the whale lived in a small salty lake. She was the only whale in that territory, and she led a very comfortable life. In fact, this easy life made her a bit fussy. But one year, there was such an incredibly hot summer that the lake's water really warmed up. Gale, used to such an ideal existence, could hardly stand the hot water. A little fish, which had spent some time in a child's goldfish bowl, told Gale that humans used fans to cool themselves down in summer. From then on, Gale the whale couldn't think of anything else apart from how to build her very own fan. Everyone told her that she was overreacting, and that the hot weather would soon pass, but Gale got to work, constructing her enormous fan. When it was finally finished, she started fanning away at herself. Unlucky for the fish. The giant fan beat the little lake's waters so strongly that huge waves rolled right across it. The waves crashed onto the lakeshore, leaving the lake half empty, and Gale stranded in only a few inches of water. "You couldn't just hang on for a while. You had to empty the lake," some unhappy-looking fish berated her. "So impatient. So selfish," others shouted. But the worst of it for Gale was not the insults, but the fact that with so little water around her, the heat was becoming unbearable. Preparing herself to die of heat stroke, she said her goodbyes to all her friends, and they asked for her forgiveness. She assured them all that if she were to live again, she would be stronger and learn to put up with life's discomforts. Yet, once again, Gale the whale was overreacting. She managed to survive those hot days without dying, although, of course, she suffered. When the next rains arrived, the lake filled up again, and the weather improved. Naturally, Gale had to keep her promise, and show everyone that she had learned not to be so dependent on comfort, so impatient, and so fussy. There was a villager. He was illiterate. He did not know how to read and write. He often saw people wearing spectacles for reading books or papers. He thought, "If I have spectacles, I can also read like these people. I must go to town and buy a pair of spectacles for myself." So one day he went to a town. He entered a spectacles shop. He asked the shopkeeper for a pair of spectacles for reading. The shopkeeper gave him various pairs of spectacles and a book. The villager tried all the spectacles one by one, but he could not read anything. He told the shopkeeper that all those spectacles were useless for him. The shopkeeper gave him a doubtful look. Then he looked at the book. It was upside down. The shopkeeper said, "Perhaps you don't know how to read." The villager said, "No, I don't. I want to buy spectacles so that I can read like others. But I can't read with any of these spectacles." The shopkeeper controlled his laughter with great difficulty when he learned the real problem of his illiterate customer. He explained to the villager, "My dear friend, you are very ignorant. Spectacles don't help to read or write. They only help you to see better. First of all, you must learn to read and write." Moral: ignorance is blindness. Once upon a time there was a river. This river was rather unfriendly and lonesome. The river could not remember how long ago he had decided that he no longer wanted to put up with anything or anyone. He lived alone, refusing to share his water with any fish, plant, or animal. And so his life went on, sadly and filled with loneliness, for many centuries. One day, a little girl with a goldfish bowl came to the bank of this river. In the bowl lived Scamp, her favorite little fish. The girl was about to move to another country, and she wouldn't be able to take Scamp with her. So she had decided to give Scamp his freedom. When Scamp fell into the river, he immediately felt the river's loneliness. Scamp tried talking to the river, but the river told Scamp to go away. Now, Scamp was a very happy little fish, and he wasn't going to give up so easily. He asked and asked, swam and swam, and finally he started jumping in and out of the water. The river, feeling all the jumping and splashing, started to laugh. It tickled. After a while, this put the river in such a good mood that he started talking to Scamp. Almost without knowing it, by the end of that day, Scamp and the river had become very good friends. The river spent that night thinking about how much fun it was to have friends, and how much he had missed by not having them. He asked himself why he had never had them, but he couldn't remember. The next morning, Scamp woke the river with a few playful splashes, and that was when the river remembered why he had decided to be such an unfriendly river. He remembered that he was very ticklish, and that he wouldn't have been able to stand it. Now he remembered perfectly how he had told everyone to scoot, that he wasn't going to put up with all the tickling. But, remembering how sad and lonely he had felt for so many years, the river realized that although it may sometimes be a bit inconvenient or uncomfortable, it was always better to have friends and to try to be happy.
An awkward and unattractive duckling is ridiculed by others, but as time passes, he grows into a beautiful swan. This tale teaches that beauty comes from within and that it's important not to judge others based on appearances. Moral: don't judge a book by its cover.